Well, good evening, folks. Iowa defeating Rutgers 27-20 on this Saturday evening. This is Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and the voice of college football. We're simulcasting as we do each and every week on both channels from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube and Iowa football at the voice of college football here on YouTube, partnering with the great Mark Rogers, doing great stuff at the voice of college football. And we are here to talk about Iowa's 27-10 victory, and has the offense turned the corner? That'll be a fun conversation to have. As always, you're welcome to join the show in a variety of ways. You can join us in the chat. I can see a lot of people already active in the chat, which is awesome. Very much appreciate people participating in this fashion. If I miss your comment, I apologize. I am not trying to do that. I can tell you one thing. We did just get approval for a new method of supporting this show. You'll see a little join button next to subscribe. If you're already subscribed here, that's great. But now you can join as a premium member, and there are some perks associated with that membership. But of course, it's also just another way to support what we're doing here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you're loving the content, if you're enjoying the weekly and oftentimes daily content, consider joining here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and we'll continue to fine-tune our different options of being able to support this show. If you want to call in, there's a couple of different ways you can do that as well. If you're new to the show, or if you've been here a few times and have hesitated to call in, don't be afraid to do so. Would love to hear from you. Of course, you can call in at the number. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. I'll make this big for everybody. Actually, you cannot see the number. Here's the number, 515-635-1601. Now, keep in mind, we have just one line open. All right, so you're also able to, we have unlimited lines open by the link in the description below. So if you're able to join via internet, you can either have your video on or off, doesn't matter. But the link to join in this way is in the description below this video. Again, regardless of which channel you're watching the show on. So 515-635-1601 or the link in the description below. No Coach Patterson tonight. He'll be joining us tomorrow night, Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time right here on the channel. So Coach Patterson is actually doing a Missouri Valley Conference game, did a Missouri Valley Conference game this evening for ESPN in the Missouri Valley. And so he does a great job doing that, as he does here on our show. But we'll be back tomorrow for kind of part 2 of this show. So we're just plugging away, trying to provide great analysis and reaction. Honestly, a lot to get to in this game this evening. Iowa with its, tying, I guess, for its highest output of the season with 27 points. We know over half of those points coming on the defensive end. Before we get to my overall takeaways, we've got some calls piling up here already. We'll start with one of our regular callers. He's turned into a regular caller here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Ryan is on the line. Ryan, how you doing? What do you think of the Hawks?
Hey, Corey, thanks a lot. I guess I didn't learn a whole lot, but I will say, number one, Spencer did not hurt us today. I thought he looked a lot more crisp with his passing, much more accurate. I thought the offensive line, definitely the run blocking improved. I thought LaShawn really hit the holes very well. So did Caleb.
Ryan, I just want to make sure. Can everybody hear Ryan on the phone? Just want to make sure everybody can hear. I see Alex in the chat. Can you hear Ryan? Give me a head nod if you can. Okay, we're good. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry about that.
I thought that we definitely hit the holes very well. The offensive line does look like it's improving some. And that did make me feel a lot better. The 86-yard drive still only resulted in a field goal. I do kind of feel like we're going to have issues when it's like, first and goal on the 7. We don't seem to have that real good play that we used to do where you can pass for 7 yards or that kind of a thing. Overall, Spencer did not hurt us at all. He wasn't great. We still only scored 13 offensive points, which is still a concern. kind of like what I said last week. Once again, we won on the backs of the defense, and that's been the formula for a while. But I was at least encouraged that Spencer didn't seem to panic as much. He definitely had, I thought, a better pocket presence with a couple of exceptions. The one thing that just drove me batty is why would Brian Ferentz call a pitch out when you got half a yard to go to get the first down, and we threw a pitch out to Caleb Johnson where two defenders were just right there ready just to meet him for a 5-6 yard loss. I thought that was just ridiculous. I certainly missed the days where you had the confidence in Nate Stanley from a yard out being able to pretty much be automatic in getting that.
Yeah, and I think Iowa's become a bit gun shy with QB sneaks. I think they've reacted to some of the maybe overreacted to some of the problems. If you recall the Purdue game, I think it was the Purdue game where they tried to sneak it 2 or 3 times and turned it over on downs in that game. And it seemed like there was a lot of backlash from them doing that. But you're right. Iowa was effective with QB sneaks, not only under Nate Stanley. There were times with Spencer that they executed well when you have a guy like Tyler Linderbaum up front, but they don't have that this year. So
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if – I'm not saying that I would advocate for a pitch on that play. But I can understand maybe not being comfortable right now with your center, because I don't think they are comfortable with their center. I think it's clear that Logan Jones has a long ways to go before they feel real comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. You still would hope that if he is going to be anointed as the starting center, even though we both acknowledge that it's going to be somewhat of a work in progress and you're not going to get a Tyler Linderbaum anytime soon, still should be good enough if you're the starter to anchor to get us 1 yard in that play, in my opinion. But I'm sure the rationale is exactly what you just said. All in all, I think the defense is pretty darn good. I think we always knew that. Cooper DeJean, looking like Willie Mays with the over-the-head catch, a little turnaround, and a 45-yard pick six was just unbelievable. It's his third interception this year out of 4 games. I mean, that enjoy him while you got him, because I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll come back next year, but he could be a candidate to leave after his junior year, because I think he's only going to get better. I also think when you have such, I do like our running backs, especially LaShawn and Caleb Johnson. But when you're very short on the playmaker side with the offense, I think maybe even having him in for a few offensive plays would be a good look, because I think he would compete very well. I think the guy is just a flat out playmaker. My only last go ahead.
Yeah, let me just add one thing, Ryan, then you can go to your last point. But I was given some thought about this week, and I don't think I don't typically just throw random ideas out there, unless I really believe that it's something that would work. And I know Don Patterson has talked about it as well. But you remember back in even 2020, Iowa deployed a lot of Wildcat.
Yeah.
And it never really made a whole lot of sense to me, because oftentimes they'd line up 2 or 3. Well, they line up 3 backs. It'd basically be Mekhi Sargent, Tyler Goodson, and Amir Smith-Marset. I'm trying to think of who, or Tyrone Tracy. I think
Tracy. It was Tracy.
But they never threw out of it. Never threw out of it, and it was never very successful. But they threw it in there. It seemed just to kind of be creative, or to appear creative, and they completely abandoned it. Why not use Cooper DeJean and win a Wildcat?
Absolutely. Or
he can throw the football. You want to watch his high school he can throw the football. So now not only do you have a threat because of his athleticism, his ability to be a ball carrier, but now he can actually operate as a Wildcat quarterback. I'm serious about that idea. I'm going to bring that up to Don tomorrow, because I think it's I agree with you. You're not gonna switch him to the offensive side of the ball, but we're talking a few plays to have in your repertoire on a week-to-week basis, and you may not even show it every week. But
It didn't hurt Charles Woodson 20 years ago at Michigan. To your point, I think he's the exact guy for that. And if you look, the Brian Ferentz, for as maligned as he is in our fan base, especially nowadays, I thought he pitched a masterpiece in the USC bowl game, Holiday Bowl in 2019. That was an offensive masterpiece. We beat USC with speed, using Smith Marset and Tyrone Tracy's speed, doing some flea flickers and whatnot. We need to utilize more guys with speed and guys that are just natural playmakers. I think Smith Marset was definitely a natural playmaker. Tracy was very good running the ball. He had some issues with the drops, but he was very good running the ball, I thought. And then my only last comment, I couldn't help but notice, and hopefully I'm not going to come off as nitpicking, but what does kind of bother me is I feel like Iowa is where wide receivers go to die. And more, it's just feeling that way. Charlie Jones proving it doesn't help, but that's neither here nor there. I think the very first target for a wide receiver, let alone catch, the first target was to Reganey, I'll call him. I don't remember how you're supposed to pronounce his name, but it was 2 minutes into the fourth quarter. And then the very next play, Arlen Bruce caught a 5-yard little 5-yard thing. And they just do not use wide receivers at all. And, if Spencer's going to be the answer, fine. But let's throw down the field a little bit more. He did a couple of times in the Nevada game, which was great to see. But to not even target a wide receiver until the 13-minute, 6-second mark in the fourth quarter, I thought was not a good look, but that's my opinion.
I think it's a great observation, and I'll be honest, I was feeling pretty good until you said that. But you're right; it was an observation I had during the game, and I just got the official box score from the university, and you're right. One catch for a wide receiver tonight. It was a 5-yard catch from Arlen Bruce. One target for Brecht, one target for Reganey, one target for Bruce. That's it.
Okay, then maybe I messed Brex. I don't recall him being targeted, but maybe I missed that one. But I remember well deep into the third quarter telling my wife, we have not targeted a wide receiver yet. We were targeting Laporta and Lachey pretty well, and I definitely do not disagree doing that. I think they're very good players and very good targets. I just wish we would you throw the ball down the field a little bit more. When you're number 131 in the country and in your heart, even as maligned as our offense is, we still have more talent than a lot of the teams ahead of us on offense. A lot of those guys don't have a future, NFL guy like Sam Laporta. They definitely don't have a 4-star receiver out of high school who I think's also got that playmaking ability in Arlen Bruce. Why didn't we see a flea flicker where Arlen Bruce runs the ball? I remember we had him actually run the ball in the Kentucky game a little bit. He got a long touchdown. Looked real good. The guy, he kind of can play that Deebo Samuel type of role where you can catch things in the slot, play a little running back, run the ball to give a different look, so on and so forth. I think he's a great talent that is also underutilized. I know Keegan has really hardly played all this year due to injury. But even when you look back at last year, when he was clearly our best wide receiver, in my opinion, that we actually used. I mean, in hindsight, it probably was Charlie Jones, but they were all across the board, very underutilized. So what's the crime in having a quarterback that can use the talent that is at your disposal, and God forbid you get 225, 250 passing yards. I'm not saying you got to throw it like Aiden McConnell does, but and I like having more of a balanced rush to pass attack, but 146 yards was it for Petrus, 148 today, something like that.
148.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Rutgers has an excellent defense, and we're going to go.
Well, he only threw the ball 17 times.
And I wish
I'm not saying. Listen, he only threw the ball 17 times. Let me defend him for a second.
I agree. Hey, I do not think he played bad today. He was a game manager. He did not hurt us, and I thought his accuracy was improved. Would have been nice to test him a little bit because he did seem more confident out there than he did definitely against Iowa State.
The first drive was a disaster.
Yeah.
You get a nice throw to Sam Laporta along the sidelines, and in the second series you have a 1st and 10 false start. So that's the second straight game where they've basically opened up with a false start. Last game they opened up first play from scrimmage, they get a false start. This is a second offensive play from scrimmage, they get a false start. So you're 1st and 15. They get a slant to Sam Laporta. He's lined out wide right, and I mean Petrus just throws it high and behind. And then second down, I believe. I don't have second down in my memory bank here. I believe second down was a run play? Basically ended up being 3rd and 15, which ended up being a check down to Gavin Williams, and they punted. But after that, I agree with you. I thought Spencer was good. I mean, I good. He was good enough.
Yeah.
He was. If he can play, if he can put up these types of numbers, and I'm talking, not throwing picks and making the makeables, then they can beat teams. The problem is, can he do that with the likes of Michigan and Wisconsin? I know Wisconsin's got their tails beat in today, but that's a really good defense. And we talked about how good Rutgers defense is, and I'm not going to backpedal on that. That's a good defense they played today. Are they the 10th best defense in the country? No, they're not, because their total defensive ranking right now is, I believe, 10 heading into this weekend. However, they've played Boston College on the road. They played Wagner, and they played Temple.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where those numbers are coming from. With that being said, we know Greg Schiano's reputation as a defensive coach. I still anticipate them being a top 50 defense, but I'm just saying, different level next week. Maryland was able to move the ball against Michigan today.
Yeah.
So Michigan, there may be some chinks in the armor there and some opportunities for Iowa, but I still believe that what you have next week is going to be a whole different animal. And they're backing Kinnick. And frankly, I have more confidence in Spencer on the road than I do at home. His best performances have been on the road. Penn State in 2020 was a solid performance for him. As I recall, Illinois in the second half in 2020 was a really good half for Spencer. And then last year, I'd say second quarter against Iowa State was his best quarter of the season, in Ames. So I think there's something going on the road that kind of helps him flush especially when the fans are booing. And I'm not saying that I approve or disapprove of that, but I think that's an aspect of it. I think he kind of plays looser on the road. He plays tight at home.
He does.
I think it affects his fundamentals. I think it affects his headspace. That's just my observation.
He sure did come clutch in the Penn State game, though. I will, with 6 minutes to go, that go-ahead score to Nico was. I've watched that on YouTube over and over again, and
Nico was wide open.
Yeah, he was, but
it's a good throw.
It was a good throw. It's also though Rutgers still only gave up 13 against a bad Iowa offense. And, Maryland getting 27 against Michigan. I agree with you. That gave me hope. But Tagovailoa is a passer. He's going to throw downfield. He's going to use his wide receivers. And I just don't think we're going to do that. I think our best chance to win is to follow the 2016 formula. where we kind of used Akram Wadley as about 80% of our offense and squeaked it by on a last-second kick. It's going to be we're going to have to keep it. We're going to probably as long as our defense holds up and keeps Michigan at bay to a certain degree. We're going to just try to hang with them and try to bite them at the end, I guess. My last comment, Corey, before I go, I just wanted to make a comment that if the play clock is a rule that you have to get the ball off before the play clock hits 0, if that is a rule, then why the heck wouldn't that be reviewable? I mean, that's ridiculous. They can watch the same review or replay we watch, see that they clearly missed it, and call it back. That should not have been a touchdown. We should have only given up 3 points, or well, maybe 6 points, because I'll assume they would have gotten a field goal on that. If
one thing to add, Ryan, and I'll let you go on the play clock situation. I agree. I think it should have been a delay of game. Should it be reviewable? Probably, but here's what I would remind you, and it kind of got referenced by the FS1 commentators. There is a human element to making that call. It's not if there wasn't a human element to the rule, then there would be a buzzer that goes off, similar to basketball or hockey. There would be a buzzer that goes off at the end of that play clock, but there's not. So my understanding of the rule, and again, this would be a better conversation with Don Patterson, but my understanding of the rule is, so the official's looking at the clock when it hits 0. Basically, there's another second that goes by, as I don't want to call it a grace period, but it basically accounts for that time where the official looks from the clock to the play. And so that extra second kind of has to be accounted for. I know that's how it is in the NFL. I'm assuming that's how college functions as well. I do think it should have been called, though. But that's a hard one. Unless you change the language of the actual delay of game rule, I think it'd be hard to go back and say definitively. Like, I think was it Dean Blandino or whoever it was that chimed in and basically said, unless it's absolutely obvious, like there was a malfunction, they can't go back and change it. So I understand why they can't go back and change it, but maybe looking at the language of that rule would make sense, because that's happened before.
Right. Okay, well, didn't cost us the game, but
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Do you feel any better? I feel a little better. I thought we had a good game today. 13 points offensively, little concerning still, but it was a good Rutgers defense, and the Big Ten's a meat grinder, so we'll see. I do feel getting to a bowl is a lot more likely now. I know last week when we talked, I had my serious doubts that we would even be bowling this year, and I guess with a defense like this, there's probably no way we're not going to bowl.
Yeah, 200, or excuse me, 100, and let me pull up I have the box score in front of me. For the game, 162 rushing yards. That's total. Of course, factoring in sack yardage. LaShawn Williams averaged 5.8 a carry, Caleb Johnson 3.9, Gavin Williams 2.4. So quite a wide range there. So at times the running game looked good, and at times it didn't look good. It's still too much. To me, there's way too much feast or famine with this run game, and I don't really understand why it has to be either an 8-yard gain or a 4-yard loss. I'm no run game expert, but at times the run game looked better. And if the run game is, somebody referenced this in the chat, at times it felt like 2020. That's the recipe to winning with this quarterback and with this wide receiver room.
Well, a couple of times we handed it off, like once for sure to Gavin, handed it off with a Rutgers defender already breaking through the line, ready to tackle him the second the guy got the ball. Maybe that's a good time to tuck it and throw it away.
Right.
So anyway, thank you very much, Corey. I love your show.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
All right, let's we'll keep plugging away here. Alex has been on hold. Our phone line hasn't been touched. I hope that it's active. It's working. The number's at the bottom of your screen, 515-635-1601. When that line goes busy, we'll update that on the screen, so keep your eye on the bottom ticker. We'll add Alex to the mix here. Alex, how you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. That was a more enjoyable game than that was probably the most enjoyable game of the season, right? I don't think there's any
yeah, the overhead too, if anyone bet on that.
Yeah, well, how about that? I wasn't even thinking about the over.
So, I'm not going to stay on here too long. Family wants to start a movie here soon, so I'll start with the negatives that I've noticed. Is that does it seem like Iowa's getting I was kind of being undisciplined this year in terms of penalties. They had quite a few penalties in this game.
Couple special teams penalties that are going to keep LeVar Woods up at night. I mentioned the false starts on the first, like the second play from scrimmage today and the first play from scrimmage last week. Those are unacceptable, and I would have to think. So yeah, procedural stuff is there's some things to clean up there, but I don't even know. I can tell you exactly how many penalties they had for the game. For the game,
seven, and they commented that Iowa had the most penalty yards.
It's 6 penalties for 50 yards. So no, there's things to clean up there. And again, I'd have to go back. I know that there were 2 on special teams. There was the one on early, and I'd have to go back and look for the other 2. But yeah, that's something to clean up, certainly.
Yeah, and then the previous caller mentioned that the wide receiver targets, the one that he missed was at the very start of the game when Iowa, that first possession, I believe, when they went 3 and out, when that free defender came right in Spencer's face, and he just kind of threw it at the feet of Brody. So, but yeah, outside of that, the only other target was to Nico Reggiani, or not Reggiani, or how the hell they said it on the broadcast. That was a little different to hear, but yeah, that's a little concerning. I don't know if Keegan Johnson had anything to do with that. And the waste downs, I wouldn't use anything. They had, I think, 3 or 4 waste downs, and they did nothing with them. They ran the ball. I mean, they got the first down, which is great, but it's just like you have the opportunity to get a big play, and they just didn't do anything. And maybe you got to establish, like, hey, we're second and short. We're going to run the ball once, maybe twice, and then that third time you hit them over the top. But it was both. Every time they've had it, I didn't see them utilize a waste down, second and third, or second and short, I should say.
Well, I got to do a better job of keeping my eyes on what's going on, I guess. But can someone confirm that Alec Wick, Jack Johnson, and who am I missing? Can somebody confirm that those 2? Well, no, I saw Brody, but can someone confirm that Wick and Johnson were there?
I don't. I don't know who was out there. I just know they ran it 3 times on second and third.
I guess my point, though, Al, the reason I bring that up is you're down Keegan. I wonder. I have no reason to think this other than the fact that we have to notice too. Cooper DeJean started returning punts this week for the first time.
Yeah.
And Arlen Bruce had a nice week last week. So is Arlen 100%? That'd be my question to Kirk if I was in that press conference this evening. Is Arlen okay? Because he had 1 target and did not return punts. And he had a nice day returning punts last week. I just find that a little odd that they would switch to Cooper. So perhaps that's part of why you're not taking advantage. Not to defend Brian. I agree with you. That's always been a bugaboo of mine, not taking advantage of waste downs. But I will say this, when you get up in a game like this, Iowa has the reputation when you get up, whether it's 14-3 or they were up to 27-10, they just going to sit on that ball and whatever they can do to move the chains, even if it is second and inches, they're going to run the ball to move the chains. That's just kind of how they operate. They're not looking to put the nail down. I mean, you knew when they went up 3 scores, they were content. You could tell they went into on defense. They went
shell. They went protect
mode. Yeah.
Just prevent.
Rutgers racked up yardage in that second half because I think Iowa kind of loosened the reins and was content with letting them drive the field.
And a couple other things that I had concerned by was, and you harped on this last year, and in this game I really paid attention to it, was that halftime, just the time management of it, just how slow they were going. And I'm just like, and I was watching the game, and my fiance was there, and she goes, "Hey, Alex, calm down." I'm like, I can't calm down. The clock's going down. They need to go. Yeah, they got 3 points out of it, but it's like we could have gotten the touchdown. That's the other thing. It's just the red zone inefficiencies. They get a free play when that pass interference got called, and LaShawn Williams got the touchdown. But their red zone efficiency has been so poor, along with time management.
Let me just say this real quick. Again, biggest Hawkeye guy out there, right here, right? That was a terrible call against Rutgers.
Yeah.
That was a terrible pass interference call. Iowa should have never had that 2-yard run from LaShawn Williams, because the definition of that pass from Spencer Petras was uncatchable.
Yeah.
I mean, that pass interference penalty should have never been called. If I was a Rutgers fan, I'd be ticked on that.
The refereeing, and I watched some of that Iowa State game, and even in this game, some of the refereeing was really awful this week.
Yeah.
And
the Iowa State game was not good either. You're right.
No, and they only called roughing the passer one time, and that the Cooper DeJean interception, they probably should have thrown it there, but it's like, you know what, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth at this point. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no, that was a clean hit.
Yeah,
but I mean, Iowa's defensive line looked good. They got pressure. I mean, they only got I think 2 or 3 sacks on the game, but they pressured that quarterback a lot. And credit to, what was his name, Evan Stevens or something Evans. He took a beating, and he stayed in there. So
yeah, Evan Simon. No,
Evan
that kid was hit over and over and over and over again. I had somebody reach out to me during the game and said, boy, this kid might be worse than Petras. And I thought, that's not fair to this kid. He's getting absolutely blasted.
He's getting lit.
He's the only scholarship guy. He's a third-string quarterback. He's the only scholarship guy left, and he just kept getting up. I have a lot of respect for that kid. And he threw for over 300 yards.
I saw that. Now I think that most of that came in the second half when looked like Iowa's defense was playing shell. They're not, just don't let up the big plays and everything. So but then the positives I have, the offensive line looks improved. Now this is a better, probably one of the best defenses we've played so far. Iowa State may have something to say about that, but I think this offensive line, I think whatever rotation or whoever we have in there now is what we need to stick with, barring any injury, obviously. But they protected Spencer fairly well. There's still some need to be better there. But they open up the holes for Caleb Johnson and LaShawn Williams when it was early in the game, when the defense really didn't kind of know what we were doing at that point. You could see later in the game when we were up by 3 scores and they were really playing just conservative. They kind of knew what we were doing, so they were easy. The Rutgers defense was able to tell what we were doing. So, take that with a grain of salt, take that how you will. But I thought the offensive line played a lot better. Caleb Johnson, I think he's a solid return man. I don't think he's a home run hitter like we had with Charlie Jones, but I think he can, get us some decent field position in the kickoff returns. Obviously, Cooper DeJean does the punt returns, but I think Caleb Johnson's a good solid piece there. I think he can help us get some better field position when we get the ball. Like I said, he's not like a home run here like we had with Charlie Jones. And then I know you preached on this, but Drew Stevenson, LeVar Woods does it again. Finds a hell of a kicker, and I think he's only a freshman. This kid's gonna do some wonderful things for Iowa. And
I saw that 51-yard kick that would have been good from 60 plus.
I noticed that too. I looked at that. He probably hit that from 55, if not maybe 56.
No, I think that thing hit the about halfway up that left upright.
Yeah, maybe not quite halfway, but it was pretty. It was pretty high up there, and and I saw kind of hook, and I'm like, oh come on, just doink in the good way, doink in.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
again, week 2, 48-yard field goal in the rain. I know it's all hindsight. I'm just saying.
2020. Did you hear anything on Terry Roberts? I saw in the first few series that Castro, who played a decent game, who forced the fumble that Merriweather picked up and ran back for a touchdown. So he played well. But I didn't hear anything about Terry Roberts being out until they announced
a late scratch, because I believe he was there. I didn't see him on the sidelines, but that's what I had heard, that he was there. So I'm assuming maybe he was iffy coming into the game. But I'm with you. I thought Castro played well. It shows you still that Xavier Wampa is not really close, apparently, because I thought maybe he had passed Castro up. perhaps a guy you'd bring in on cash. But again, Castro played well. And how about that hit on Castro to force the fumble in that first half? He's a big hitter, and that's what we knew about Sebastian Castro. And remember, he was listed as your starting cash going into fall camp. So he played well.
No, and so and I watched a little bit of that Maryland game too, and Michigan was able to run the ball, and buddy of mine I work with said he was pretty confident that Michigan would blow out Maryland, and I says this defense has not been tested, and this offense hasn't been tested either. I mean, Maryland has a defense with a pulse, but that's really all you can say about them. They're better than Hawaii, Colorado State, and UConn, but they're not a great defense. So I think, and he was talking about the Iowa-Michigan game. He says Michigan's going to light up Iowa's defense. I go, I'm not convinced in that. But so I'm looking forward to next week, that Iowa-Michigan game. I think I'm a little more confident going into that game. I think I'm not drinking the Spencer Petras Kool-Aid. Maybe I've taken a little sip. He looked a little better. I think I think this is what he needs to do, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll get off. He threw 17 times, and I think for Iowa's offense to be really successful, that's what we need to do. And he targeted his tight ends, his safety blanket, and they had some good catches. That one deep pass to Laporta that set up the I think they only got a field goal out of that if memory serves correct, or maybe it was the touchdown, but. Regardless, I just, I'm not convinced Spencer's the best option we have yet. If he looks great against Michigan, fine, I'll buy in on it. But I'm not going to sit here and say he's, even after that, if he does well against Michigan, not going to say he's a good quarterback because he's still not a great quarterback. But that's all I have. Again, thanks for taking my call. Always a pleasure being here. Every week, and hope to see you again next week.
Let's talk after the Michigan game. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate Alex calling in as always, and we got about 400 people on here. If you are new to the show or you're a returning subscriber, appreciate you being here. Please subscribe if you've not done so. Please hit the like button as well, and sharing the show on social media. This is an important thing. If you are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're at, you got Hawkeye friends, please help this show out. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the share button, copy the link, share it to social media, or maybe send a text message out to some friends that haven't watched the show, or remind them that we're live here talking Iowa football following each and every game. And remember, we'll be back tomorrow night with Coach John Patterson at 7 p.m. for Iowa Postgame Part 2. And we'll talk with Coach Patterson about an impressive victory for Iowa. I mean, there are still lots of things to work on. The offense still got outscored by the defense. How about that? But still, lots of positives when you go on the road in the Big Ten Conference against an improved Rutgers team and a good Rutgers defense and put up 27 points, regardless of how you got to that 27 number. Let's get to our next caller who is on hold. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's Iowa Postgame. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's Cooper.
Hey, Cooper. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Better after that win.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, I was happy about it. I mean, I'll take a Big Ten win, and I thought there were some improvements. And I mean, obviously, my name's Cooper, and Cooper DeJean may be an absolute stud.
Oh, I agree. And it's you're not just biased because he shares your first name, right?
Well, I was before today, and well, I'd say before the season, but after this start. And that kid's, I was a little mad at him in the beginning for that deep ball, but just because he's living on the name, but I think that he made up for it real quick.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I think it was Ryan earlier, our first caller, made a comment about him going to the league early. That's premature, and I think Ryan understands that, but I understand where he's coming from. I will say this, he's got to prove himself in coverage more. Yes, he made a really nice pick, the Willie Mays type interception, but I still think that there are going to be teams that test him with double cuts, with go routes, and he's going to have to prove himself. Just like I said, Riley Moss, I thought had some things to prove, and I don't know how well Riley's playing right now. again, without looking at quote unquote game film, it's hard for me to evaluate that certainly. And that again would be a better question for Don Patterson. But we saw Riley get beat once in the end zone today, got out of position, gave up a touchdown. But you're right, Cooper DeJean right now is, I think, maybe the star on defense. Before this week, I'd say Terry Roberts, a guy who didn't even play tonight, might have been my star, my MVP so far. But this whole defensive unit is just playing really well. And how about Kevon Merriweather? The kid is kind of been unheralded, and he made a couple huge plays tonight.
Absolutely. And I think Kayvon's one of those guys that's been there for a while. And he's not Jet Campbell. He's not Jet Kerner for last year. He wasn't Matt Hankins, but he was at center of that defense, and I think he played real well. And I think it's starting to come to fruition tonight. I would say that one, I'm going to be completely honest. Since I've been on hold, I haven't been able to listen to the show. So if I bring up things that we've already talked about, you are completely free to just cut me off.
Sure.
I think Alex was just talking as I called. So since then, I'm on my old headphones, and I just, if I go onto the show, it just cuts me off. So, but I think Kayvon has played a hell of a game today. Obviously, I think that one that Riley was out of coverage, I think he was also out of coverage. And I'm not obviously trying to talk smack on Riley. I think I went to high school at Hawkeyes, and he went to Ankeny or Centennial, I believe.
Yeah.
And I remember when he went in as a freshman, and he got burned a few times, but then he came up with that huge pick. It may have been the Minnesota game, 2019.
Yes. Yeah. He had a couple big performances against Minnesota. And then you remember in 2017 was his debut, and that was against Minnesota as a freshman up in Minneapolis, and got picked on early, and I think had a pick. No, he's had some career-defining moments against the Gophers.
Yeah, I think he one thing I was quote unquote proud of him for was he had a couple of tackles in space today, which I think that's huge. Obviously, I don't think that's obviously a controversial statement, but when you get out wide and he's kind of the last defense, and he made some decent tackles. But what you were saying before is he may have been out. He was out of position on that touchdown. He had it was the exact same. I mean, it was almost to a T, the exact same thing where he broke up that pass in the end zone. I mean, he stretched out with his left hand real wide. I mean, he made a hell of a play. He broke up the pass, but it was pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Where
he kind of had his shoulders basically square to the pylon, and he had to reach back.
Yeah, no, he's, and I think sometimes when you don't hear, we're so used to Riley Moss last year being the pick six guy and the interceptions guy, and apparently that's turned into Cooper DeJean, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not playing well. I actually thought Matt Hankins, and some people really disagree on this, but I actually think Matt Hankins was the better corner last year. And part of the reason why I believe that is because opposing coaches did not pick on Matt nearly as much when he was healthy, nearly as much as they tried to pick on Riley Moss.
Absolutely.
So, there were things that Riley needed to work on heading into this season that I think would have held him back being a top 3, top 4 round draft pick. And perhaps those things have been remedied. But again, has he been tested? Not really. I mean, there's a lot of there are going to be plenty of teams. It starts with J.J. McCarthy next week coming into Kinnick. That's going to be a test. C.J. Stroud's going to test him. Riley Moss is probably going to be matched up with Smith and Jigba, although now Iowa can at least throw, Cooper DeJean and Terry Roberts at that kid. But, they got Marvin Harrison Jr. There's just a lot of really good skill position players. Charlie Jones comes to mind. So,
yep.
Yeah, those guys will have their calling card.
No, I actually think from my vantage point, I think it's kind of like a switch of the cards a little bit, because I think in the beginning, which I'm not sure why. I mean, they pick on Cooper on that deep route a little bit, but once he had that pick six, they kind of switched. So I could see if you get a couple picks in the secondary in Riley and Cooper, like where do you go after that point? I think they're going to have I think teams will have a hard time picking on a side of the field. And I think Riley and Cooper, but Don Patterson talked about it with I think a caller brought up pump fakes. He was actually talking about Spencer, but Don talked about pump fakes with Cooper because he likes to jump passes. And I think that could potentially get picked on. But I mean, one play where he breaks it up or he gets a pick, you go to the other side of the field, and then there's Riley. Like I think we're doing pretty well in the secondary.
I agree. Yeah, no, and at every level right now, and it's good to see Justin Jacobs back tonight. And that defensive line is, I mean, a split second off from being absolutely dominant. And I don't know how good that Rutgers offensive line is today, but boy, Simon took a lot of hits, and it's going to be hard regardless of the yardage today for Rutgers. It's going to be hard to move the ball against this defense. I don't care who you are.
I told I was watching the game with my family actually, and we were talking about second strings, and I was like, well, Iowa's second string goes in, it's basically a first string defensive line. I mean, like, there's like 11 guys or 10 guys out there that are first string offensive or defensive linemen. Like, so that's why we're getting so much pressure, even when we're not necessarily playing whatever our first string would technically be. Like the depth at that position is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And this is one point. I don't know if this got brought up, and when I was waiting to talk here, do you think Caleb Johnson runs differently, or do you think Gavin Williams got unlucky on play calls? I guess that's kind of a stupid question. Do you know what I mean, though?
I know what you mean. Yeah, there are times when I look at a play and I think, boy, that play got blown up, but why is that only happening when Gavin and LaShawn are in there, and it's not happening when Caleb's in there? However, late in the game, there were a couple plays, and somebody brought that up earlier with the pitch to Caleb that got blown up. So I think part of that's play calling. Part of that's just, play to play assignments not being fulfilled. But Caleb runs different. There's no question about him. And Don Patterson compared Caleb Johnson to kind of a poor man's Eric Dickerson. He's just got a very smooth stride. I do think he hits the hole a bit firmer than the other two guys, which is ironic because we said the same thing about the Williams boys after Tyler Goodson opted out of the bowl game last year. We said, well, the Williams kids, they hit the hole hard. I think Caleb Johnson's a bit more decisive, and that says a lot as a freshman.
Absolutely.
But I like them all. I think LaShawn, let's not forget what LaShawn did. I thought he ran tough that first week, and that line didn't block at all. He still managed to muster up like 70 yards in that game. So I like LaShawn. Honestly, I think LaShawn and Caleb Johnson are Iowa's two best backs. And then, Gavin Williams, by all accounts, he's a great leader, and certainly he deserves playing time. Do you run with three backs? They did in 2015, and it worked out well.
Let's not forget that, which I thought with the rules today that it may have been called targeting, that special teams Gavin Williams blocked.
Yeah.
Earlier on in the game, blew him up. I mean, he's a hard player. I think I commented in the chat. It's probably about an hour ago, but it seems that Caleb Johnson just doesn't have. How Goodson, it seemed that Goodson kind of sat a little bit. It doesn't seem that Caleb has that really in his game, where if the play's blown up a little bit, and it did get blown up a couple times, and at that point, if it's too blown up for Xavier, then you're just going to not get a gain. But it seems like he hits those holes real hard and real quick. Like he makes up his mind and he hits those holes. And I just think he's a hell of a back, and I'm excited to watch him grow.
I agree. And he's just a freshman, and he just got here, so he's going to be going through the strength program next year and spring ball. He's only going to get better.
Exactly.
All right, Cooper. I appreciate the call, sir, as always. Thanks for chiming in. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yep. Thanks, Corey.
Thanks
for all you do. It's really awesome with your content.
Thank you. Appreciate it, sir. Appreciate Cooper here and everyone for being here. We've got some callers on hold, so we'll continue to plug away here from the Hawkeye of the Storm as we recap Iowa's 27-10 victory over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Am I saying that right? The Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Sponsor the show if you're interested in sponsoring this show and, of course, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, or if you know a small business or a large business that wants to sponsor and support, email from the eye of the storm at outlook.com and let me know you're interested in inquiring about sponsorships, partnerships, etc. from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. Let's get to Austin, who's been on hold. Austin, thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and the voice of college football, who's on the line. Well, just say it's a mechanical response, Austin. I know you're on the line. Where are you calling from, Austin?
I'm from Dubuque.
Good to hear from you, Austin, and your thoughts on the game tonight.
So first thing, I know leading into this game, I had asked you if from the Nevada game, if we had enough passing yards on the book, enough on film, that Rutgers, if Rutgers needed to respect our passing game. After today, and you had said probably not. After today, do you think Michigan is going to have to say, oh, well, they're still a run-first offense, but we actually have to care about the passing game?
No.
Okay.
No. They had one, no offense, they had one completion to a wide receiver, and it was a pass for 5 yards.
But we had our tight end. I think we had our tight ends working enough that I think there's just that little bit that they have to at least respect and still play disciplined football. They can't just rush.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. They got to get the wide receivers more involved.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think you're going to beat Michigan with one reception for a wide receiver.
Fair.
But you're right. It was good to see Spencer actually make complete some out routes. Those are, I mean, I hate to say, as somebody who doesn't play Division I football, those are pretty simple throws, those out routes, but he's been missing them. So it's good to see him hit those tonight.
I don't think he really put any too far over the head today, which was fantastic. I did, just as a note, I'm not sure if you can see them in the private chat on the side from my end. I do list topics that I could cover. If you want to cut me off at some point, that's fine.
Yeah, no, you want to talk about Nico Bergani. What specifically about Nico?
So just as a caller had mentioned it earlier, there was some interview or something with his father, I believe, and he had corrected and said, no, our last name is Ragaini, almost like very Italian. And then and then Nico came in and put something on Twitter of like, yeah, technically it's Ragaini, but just say it fast. It's Ragaini.
I think other people are making a bigger deal of that than he is, but
yeah. So
however you pronounce the kid's name, I respect that. I think maybe we're making a bit more of that than necessary, but I also don't want to downplay it because perhaps that's something really special to his family. He did say that it can be pronounced both ways.
Well, just there was someone asking about that earlier.
Yeah.
I do think our offensive line, if we compare it today versus our first game, has just almost leaps and bounds grown. We do still have a little bit of a weird, and I think this is what's contributing to our false starts. There's just still a little bit of a disconnect in timing, but I still think they've made some pretty big improvements so far. Although a part of that, to me anyway, could just be, oddly enough, today we saw Spencer scramble a bit. He avoided tackles. I think I counted 3 or 4 times. They got back to him, and he either wheeled out or ducked and dipped and got away from what should have been a sack to Spencer last year, or would have been a sack.
Yeah.
So I think our offense, our line is holding up a little bit, and Petrus is kind of picking up the slack for him a little bit. So I've got to give that to him.
I agree. The offensive line was a lot better than it was weeks 1 and 2. Consistency is still going to be the issue because, as I said earlier, way too much feast or famine. But there were some holes tonight where it's like, wow, Caleb Johnson's got a lot of room there.
Oh yeah.
And, it did. Somebody brought up the 2020 season. Iowa had a lot of room to run that year. And I think for various reasons, but, yeah, no question about it. The offensive line has shown improvement. We'll see if it translates against a very good defensive line at Michigan.
My next one was Moss. I think that's already been talked about enough, but I do. So there was the one touchdown that he let go over, and then I thought I saw two others. It almost seemed like discipline issues. He just wasn't sticking with his guy, I felt, but I'm not a defensive guru by any means, so I could just be completely misreading what I saw on the field.
I'm not either. But I do agree. I still see time. Riley's got some strides to make, but again, he's gonna the great thing about it and the tough thing about it is he's got some unbelievably good receivers coming up, and so he's going to be tested to the full, because that Rutgers offense is not very good. We know that. Iowa State's offense is okay. Iowa State's not a great football team. I mean, I'm just telling you that right now. I think we know that. Like, we watched them against Iowa, and they were okay. Iowa was terrible on offense that day. Iowa State comes back today, loses to Baylor. Game was really not quite as close as it looked there at the end. So my point is they're going to have better offenses coming to town and opportunities for Riley to either make a name for himself or he'll be exposed and see where he still needs to make improvement the rest of the year.
Not so much a question, just a point though. Our third down conversions today were atrocious. You might say we had two. We had one third down that came out with that pass interference. So I guess you can almost call that a third down conversion, but yeah. And then our only actual third down conversion was with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Aside from that, we never made anything happen on third down today, which I just thought was atrocious. And I don't know how we managed to pull out the way we did, knowing that we did nothing on third down.
Well, Rutgers was 5 of 16, so better than Iowa, but not good. I mean, the game was very much played like we expected it to be played. I think with a little bit more ball movement, especially in that second half, because of how Iowa played. Rutgers basically lost this game on turnovers. That's where they lost the game.
They gave us 14 points off of turnovers, so absolutely.
That was basically the difference of the game.
And then the last thing, when I watch the game, I've got the video pulled up, and then I've got Dolph in my ear. I'm listening to the radio as well. I sync them up to time and watch and listen. Of course, the video feed, watching it from FS1, cuts away as soon as the pass goes out. They squeeze, or they've got the shot tight end on the quarterback, etc. Listening to it, Dolph was very frustrated with a whole lot of holding calls that didn't get thrown, in his opinion, I suppose. To the point where when they finally did throw the holding flag at that last 5 minutes left or so, yeah, he was just about jumping for joy at that point.
Yeah, somebody saw somebody in the chat that said that, and of course I didn't hear Gary, but that's another thing that's hard to see unless you're watching for it, and certainly those guys, Gary and Ed, they know what's going on at all times. We have the tendency as fans to be watching the ball, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Iowa's defensive line right now is putting a lot of pressure on not only the opposing quarterback, but the depth they throw out there for opposing offensive lines is exceptional. And that's going to be, again, just what Phil Parker has built here year after year. It's one of those things that you're able to replicate because you just always have young guys ready, and guys can, Y.A. Black has been out. Has anybody, like, this isn't any offense to Y.A. Black, but has anybody really noticed that Y.A. Black's not playing? Because they got 10 guys behind him. That it's just plug and play. It's next man in, and right now that they're the front seven is something to be reckoned with. And Jetson Jacobs, first game back today, it looked like he was working his way back in. They went a lot more with Cash than I expected, especially with Terry Roberts out and Cooper DeJean having to slide back to corner. I expected them to go more 4-3. They didn't. They went more Cash with Castro out there. But Jacobs will, hopefully next week, they're going to need him against Michigan. No question about it. His athleticism. I wouldn't be surprised they're kind of working him back in because of that injury.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and someone had said earlier, I didn't actually see the source. Apparently, Scary Terry had re-inflamed an injury early or during warm up today.
Got it.
So
Okay.
hopefully nothing too serious, but just kind of retweaked whatever he had going on in the preseason, or hopefully preseason. But
yeah, he's been sensational.
But yep, that's the last from me. I'll let you take to any of your or to the rest of your callers.
Thanks, Austin. Appreciate the call, sir.
Yep, you have a wonderful night.
You too. Appreciate all our callers here. And I see this comment from Scott. Did you see the TV shot of the Reganey family? How embarrassing Iowa can't get him the ball in front of his family. They didn't look real happy. Yeah, frustrating. I mean, the fact that he didn't get a single catch when he's back home, that's frustrating. But I'm just telling you, folks, regardless of how you feel about this offense right now, getting wide receivers involved is a must. You are not going to be, this offense is not going to be even average if they don't have wide receivers catching the football. And yes, Keegan Johnson's out. That injury may not go away. We just continue to have setbacks. They got to figure out a way to get guys involved. And yes, transfers hurt. You lose Keegan Johnson to injury. You lose Tyrone Tracy to transfer. You lose Charlie Jones to transfer. That's a factor, but you got to figure out a way to work through it. And I just don't even know, like, where was Wick? Where was Jack Johnson tonight? Very strange, but I haven't been able to listen to Kirk in the press conference. Maybe he brought up some health situations there, but we'll be interested to hear from him later. Do want to acknowledge before we get to our next call, Lemansky with the super chat. Thank you, Lemansky, for the comment and for the donation. Says, Corey, bet you were smiling on the Graves sack. I'm always smiling when I see a Graves sack. I was smiling last week when he made a couple of plays against Nevada. Yeah, that kid's special. Great kid, too. I have so much respect for him. He's just a really nice person. Had him on the show. When did I have Aaron on the show? I think it was like early this year or late last year. And boy, he does not look like a freshman. And that line is so deep. But boy, he could be playing a lot more snaps than he is once he gets in the strength and condition. I mean, I think he's already so far along. He could be playing a lot more snaps than he's getting. But that line is just so deep. He's going to be a star, though. Tremendous young man, tremendous football player. Danimal, want to thank Danimal. Becoming a YouTube member. If anybody missed, announced it at the beginning of the show, you can now, if you scroll down next to the subscribe button here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm, you can hit the join button. If you're watching this show, we've got about 276 people watching on the From the Hawkeye of the Storm channel, and about 112 people watching over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel. If you're watching through From the Hawkeye of the Storm, please consider doing what Danimal did. And again, thank you, Danimal, for becoming a YouTube member, a premium subscriber here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Exclusive perks, including some early video releases that will be available to members first. So some nice perks, and certainly it's a way to donate and to support this channel. So thank you, Danimal, for jumping on and becoming a member. Let's get to our next caller. I hope I'm getting a name here. This is I believe, is it Jax, or does this mean you're from Jacksonville, Florida, sir? Can you hear me, sir? We got a Hawkeye fan down in Florida. Can you hear me? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, we'll try to come back to him later. Let's get to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm and the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey there, Corey. It's Erica Goldberg. How are you tonight?
Good, Erica. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you. Just a few quick comments tonight. First of all, everybody who's all high on Spencer right now, I'm kind of lost as to why. I mean, he did do better tonight. There's no denying that, but he's not God's answer to quarterback, and some people are acting that way. So I think we need to be happy that he's improved, but we need to be cautious. We shouldn't just drink the Kool-Aid because he had one halfway decent evening. What do you think?
I've never been a big fan of Kool-Aid, frankly, Erica. And I'm certainly not drinking. No, I'm certainly not drinking the Spencer Petras Kool-Aid after, what were his numbers? Let me pull up his numbers just for anybody. I don't have it loaded here, but his final stats tonight were 11 of 17 for 148 yards. No touchdowns. Did have a long of 42. I mean, he made some nice throws, Erica, but I agree. I mean, this is one game, and he's got to prove. This is weird. Normally, we're talking about guys proving it on the road. I think he's got to prove it back home. I think he does play better on the road, and you can't play the blame game. Well, I don't feel like my fans are accepting me at home. I'm not saying he would say that, but this is going to be a big moment for him next week because you got Fox there, big noon kickoff, and similar to the Penn State game last year, different stakes. I get that, but no, I agree. He was good tonight. I wouldn't say good. He was average. He wasn't great. I wouldn't even say he was necessarily above average. He was average, but he did enough. If the run game works, they don't need him to be great, Erica. And I'm still not convinced that he's necessarily the best option they have. I do like what Alex Padilla brings, what we saw last year, but I'm just accepting, to the fact that Kirk is obviously latched on to Spencer, and unless something changes, something severe has to happen. Like Spencer either has to go down with an injury, or he just has to play so bad that it leaves him no choice, because as long as Spencer has stat lines like this, 11 of 17 with no picks, Kirk's going to keep playing him. He's going to keep playing him. That's just how it is. That's how Kirk's mind operates, whether you agree with it or not. The question is, again, can he be average against better teams? This is a good Rutgers defense. I don't think it's a great Rutgers defense.
Yeah, I think we overrated Rutgers defense going into this. I mean, the teams they beat, as far as I've read, I'm no Rutgers expert at all, but as far as I read, the teams that they were 3-0 against aren't stellar teams.
You're right.
So I think it's a little bit of an overrating on the side of Rutgers. But again, I'm not a Rutgers expert, so I don't really know. But that was my impression of it. The other thing I was going to say, too, about quarterback, some people were saying in the chat, and I'm not pointing fingers, or I don't want to seem like I'm coming off as rude to anybody, but some people are making comments that Spencer was good enough tonight. And I personally think that we should be holding our team to higher standard than just good enough. I don't think good enough is good enough, especially considering we have such a good defense and special teams. Although special teams tonight, that wasn't their best performance, I don't think. But that being said, I'm tired of the good enough mentality. And I also think part of the problem is, just like you said, Kirk is going to just keep going with Spencer because he's good enough. And some fans think that way, apparently. And apparently Kirk thinks that way too. And I personally kind of have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with you expressing that. I agree. I think the mentality of we're comfortable with a game manager is maybe a bit overrated in today's day and age of 2022 football. I don't necessarily. We've had these conversations for how many months now, Erica? I don't necessarily think there's anybody in this quarterback room that's a difference maker, but there are different skill sets between each guy, especially what we've seen out at Alex. He provides a degree of mobility that Spencer will never, ever, ever have, regardless of how much he works in the offseason. That's just who he is. He's a 6'5" statuesque quarterback. But I don't have any issue with you wanting more out of the quarterback position, because you look around the conference, you look around the country, you look in the NFL, and the best quarterbacks are guys who are playmakers. And Iowa when is the last time Iowa's had a playmaker? You could maybe argue CJ Beathard. But yeah, I get your frustration, and I agree with you that there should be higher standards for Iowa quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's partially on the coaches. And another thing that I was going to mention tonight, speaking of coaches, is that so last week I called in and I made the observations that the wide receiver room was favored over targeting the tight ends last week. This week, it was the tight ends over the wide receivers. And I'm wondering why we're not capable of calling a game of using both and showing some variety. Because part of the problem with Iowa football in general is that we're predictable. And on the defensive side of the ball, that's that's fine because we're number 4 in the country. That's fine. But on the offensive side of the ball, we don't want to be predictable. And part of the reason we are is because it seems like we can't vary things ever. And it also goes back to what I said last week and what you said tonight too about why can't we have some of the defensive players who have offensive experience come on and do some just quick plays every once in a while. Again, that would be another thing we could use to vary our game. And I don't know why Brian Ferentz or Kirk's involved in it. I don't know who to point the finger at. And frankly, it really doesn't matter who we point the finger at. But for whatever reason, they just seem allergic to having some type of variety when they call plays. And it's another thing that is a little bit weird to me. I don't know if it's just their capability of calling a game or if they just, for some reason, are against it.
Well, I'm under the opinion, and again, this is just from my observations, that part of the reason that Sam Laporta hadn't had as many catches through tonight or up until tonight is because they've been playing him out of position. They've been flanking him out wide. They even did that at times tonight. And to me, that's not his natural position, and you're taking away his strength as a tight end when you do that. If you look back in the history of not only Iowa football, but specifically Iowa football with Spencer Petras over these past 3 years, he is so reliant on the tight end. And so that's nothing new. Wide receiver involvement has been an issue now for years. And part of it is Spencer. Part of it, I do agree with you that it's play calling. And part of it is wide receiver play. Iowa doesn't have electric wide receivers. I don't care what people want to say about Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce. Those guys are young. They have potential, yes. Nico Reganey is an average Big Ten receiver. You've got walk-ons after him right now. They've got 2 scholarship wide receivers plus a freshman in Brecht. I don't know if Jacob Bostic's even healthy right now because I haven't seen him in the game. They don't have depth and they don't have a ton of explosive talent at that position. So I think it's a combination of all those things. But wide receiver development, you're right. They got to figure out a way to get those guys involved more because you are not going to be able to move the ball consistently against the best teams without being able to spread the ball around.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, the other thing, too, and I think one of the earlier callers said this, too, but when we had those, 3rd and 2s and, the one time especially when it was, 3rd and, inches almost, I don't get why they're not doing the quarterback sneak, especially in the 3rd and inches. I mean, I know that Linderbaum is gone, and, of course, we all miss him. But the fact is, it's not like everyone is small who's on the field, who's on the offensive line. Potterbaum's out there. He's proven that he's capable of helping in that capacity. So it's like we're allergic to quarterback sneaks. And I partially understand it, but again, I don't. And again, it's another opportunity to show some variety.
Erica, are you talking about Potterbaum running or Potterbaum helping at a QB sneak?
I'm talking about the QB sneak specifically, that he could help push for that to make Spencer get the yardage.
Yeah. Like I said, I think there's a bit of I think they're a bit gun shy from some of the overuse of that play last year and some of the criticism that was given. Now, I don't know if it's because of the outside criticism or something they looked at on tape. I do think they overused that play last year. But yeah, that's one thing that, let's be honest, that comes up into play in every aspect of what Kirk Ferentz, how he operates, is variety and not being rigid and being able to be flexible and mixing things up and being creative. I flash back for some reason, this conversation, Erica, reminds me of one of my complaints from 2017 to 2018. Iowa ran a bunch of trick plays on special teams. And, trick plays are sort of gimmicky. They're not necessarily designed. I remember the South Dakota State coach, John Stiglmeyer, I believe he called trick plays communist football. So, and I understand why he says that, because it is kind of gimmicky. You don't want to rely on trick plays, but Iowa ran a bunch in 2017 and 2018 and they worked. And then all of a sudden they haven't run any in the last 3 years. So I don't know why everything has to be black and white. You need variety.
Right.
And I think the same principle applies to play calling in short yardage situations. You got to use, it seems like Iowa just refuses to use waste downs. They've used maybe 1 or 2 of these past 2 weeks, but mixing things up is how you can keep the opponent off guard and on their toes. And that's something that can just every year we say the same thing, being able to be balanced and mix things up and be creative. That's just something that just seems like it's hard for this coaching staff to understand.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because I think we have in some of our players, we have that opportunity and we just don't use it. And it baffles me. It really baffles me, and it's concerning. And I just think this is another one of those things that's not going to change until we have new head coaches and new, offensive line coach and all this type of stuff. I just don't see it changing. And, it's kind of like the good enough mentality. It's the same thing again, where it's like another way we're mediocre and we don't deserve that. Like, we could do so much better. We would be such a threat if our offense was even average. Like, it's baffling to me, and it's starting to get frustrating. And, I have other friends who are into football, who are into other teams, and it just gets to a point where they're like, we'll be talking. I'll be like, but they're number 4 in the country in defense, and they're this, and they've done that. And they're like, yeah, but your offense stinks. It's like, well, I can't argue with that. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. I hear you, but we're going to find out a lot next week, Erica. It's just, it doesn't matter how you beat Michigan next week. There's going to be very little room for nitpicking. If they find a way to beat Michigan next week, they beat Michigan. That's it. In a game like this tonight against Rutgers, I agree with you. There's still ways we can look at it and say this is not going to cut it moving forward. But I really believe if they find a way to beat, unless it's on some fluke or Cade McNamara, they've got depth at quarterback right now. But barring some injury or freak thing that happens, they beat Michigan next week. They've made progress because what we saw weeks 1 and 2. Especially up front, there's just no way they were going to be able to move the ball against really anybody in the Big Ten, and they did that tonight. So some improvement, but you're right. There's still a long, long ways to go.
Right. I also wanted to know if you had seen the Maryland-Michigan game today and what you thought and what you think that might implicate next week as far as how Michigan did and how Maryland did. Because Maryland, I just think back to how we played them last year, and it was just a total, we killed them. And this year they looked almost like a different team to me versus when we played them. I don't know.
Yeah, I watched a portion of that game. I was watching a lot of the Iowa State-Baylor game while that game was going on. I was impressed by Maryland's offensive discipline. Typically, we saw it even last year against Iowa, the 7 turnovers they had against the Hawks, and they tend to wilt in big games, and they didn't. So normally I would place that on Michael Locksley. I don't have a ton of respect for what he's built because I mean, you look at his record as a head coach and it's not very good, but I tell you, they went into a tough place to play in the Big House and hung with the Wolverines. So I would think that there's going to be things that Kirk Ferentz and the staff can look at on tape of ways they can take advantage of what Maryland took advantage of today. And I mean, what I watched, especially late in that game, Michigan was at times taken advantage of through the air. And so there's going to be things from a schematic standpoint with the passing game that maybe there are some chinks in the armor of Michigan's defense. So we'll see. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. It's going to be, the one thing I worry about that, as I mentioned it earlier, going back to Spencer Petras at quarterback, can he play loose? Can he play even like he played tonight? And I get it, Erica. You don't think that's good enough, and I don't necessarily think it's good enough either. But if they want any chance, he cannot play any. He's got to play at least as well as he played today. And I have to see it to believe it because he typically, to me, plays tight at home.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that we know it's not going to happen, but it would be fantastic if Kirk would switch, put in Padilla a little bit next week as well, because I personally think that Alex's speed could be helpful. And, why not give it a chance, especially against that Michigan team. But again, this is just another one of those things where it's like you try to think and put yourself in the place of Kirk and you just don't understand why he makes some of his choices. This is one of those things. And I guess we're going to have to learn to be satisfied with it, at least for this season, until Spencer is no longer a Hawkeye, unfortunately.
Well, I appreciate your take and your call as always, Erica, and we'll just we'll see what happens. Like I said, the proof's going to be in the pudding because the schedule only gets tougher. Remember, before the season started, we said Iowa needed to go 4-0 in September. They went 3-1, so you're not happy with that. But Rutgers was one of the most winnable games on the schedule preseason, even though I thought it was a dangerous one. It was still one of the more winnable games on the schedule. So now you head into a stretch where there's not a ton of games that you would, at least right now, favor Iowa. And I would definitely favor Michigan next week. I'd certainly favor Ohio State. Wisconsin does not look good right now. However, they've played a couple of I think Washington State's a lot better than we thought. Ohio State is Ohio State. So they're going to have problems against a lot of these teams left in the schedule, but those are challenges that we're either going to see Iowa step up to the challenge at that position at quarterback, or we're going to see them wilt, and the proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, I agree. And I think however we could get a win next week, that would be huge, because then maybe, on a national scale or even within the Big Ten, we might get a little more respect,
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking my call, and we'll probably talk next week after our game.
Sounds good, Erica. Thanks for the call. Have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, let's try one more time. Well, before we get to our next caller here, let's get to a couple comments that I wanted to return to. First of all, our newest member, Danimal, says, I don't know if we can accurately judge the DBs yet, but has Moss regressed a bit? Again, I think it's a little premature for that, Danimal, but I want to get Don Patterson's opinion on that tomorrow. To our caller that just called in, I'm going to put you on hold. Also, Justin, why do we rotate interior O-linemen so much with a zone running scheme? I just think, Justin, play has been subpar there. And, typically along the way Iowa functions defensively, depth is usually a good thing, right? I mean, if you have 7, 8, 9 guys, that's a positive thing. If you're rotating those guys in, that's a positive thing. Or traditionally here, it's been a positive thing. Along that offensive line, typically when Iowa has 7, 8 guys that they're rotating or playing, typically it means nobody's established themselves. Because I think in an ideal world, Kirk wants to be working with 5 or 6. And, I think it's just a matter of play. Iowa has not been good. They had moments today where they ran the ball better and protected Spencer better, but there were also moments where that line broke down. Bo Stevens has shown some serious chinks, and again, he's young as well. But I don't have a perfect answer for you. Again, not being an O-line expert, Justin, I just don't think they have anybody that they're real confident up front. Jennings Dunker has had his moments, and he struggled at times as well. We know they lost Cody Ensign, Justin Britt before the season even started, and certainly Logan Jones. That situation seemed like he played better tonight. I didn't see any blatant issues with snaps, but the center is such an important position. So all around, they just got to get better play from their starters if we don't want to see guys rotating in. And I think for the better, you want guys who are pretty stable there and are playing. Your starters are playing the majority of your snaps. Let's get to our next caller. Hopefully we can get our caller on the line. We've got a fan from Jacksonville calling. Sir, can you hear us? One more try. Can you hear us? You're on the air, sir. I see Jacksonville, Florida Hawkeye fan. Are you here? All right. Apologize for it, sir. We can't hear you. So maybe log off and log back in. Let's get to Joseph's comment. Who won the punting game, Corey? I would say both punters were good as expected. Nothing crazy. Corsack is he seems a bit more. I don't know. Tory Taylor just kind of steps up and does what he does. Corsack seems like he's a bit more polished, and that's not an insult to Tory Taylor. Corsack's just an older guy, and he seems to know exactly which direction to move prior to kicking, to punting. And I don't know. He's just they're a bit different in their styles, but they're both Australian punters, and they're maybe the 2 best punters in the country. Danimal says Minnesota has got to be my favorite to win the Big Ten West right now. Boy, they looked good against Michigan State. Michigan State's, I don't know what to think of them. They go out into Washington and lose, and I don't really know much about that Washington team. But no, Minnesota looks good. Still not counting out Purdue, folks. I know they struggled. They've been struggling, but they were down Aiden O'Connell tonight. Let me get a score update on Purdue. They did take down Florida Atlantic. Close game, though, 28-26. Again, they were down Aiden O'Connell. Charlie Jones tonight had, let's see, just 59 yards through the air, but 9 catches, 2 touchdowns. So without Aiden O'Connell, he still produces. I think it's going to be a tight race still. I'm not bought into Minnesota just running away with this thing, and I'm not bought into the idea that Wisconsin's just going to disappear. I still think they will be a factor moving forward. BJ How many snaps has Xavier gotten? Would love to end up redshirting him. I doubt that happens, but because first of all, I think we're on game 4 right now. BJ, I think he's been playing in every game on special teams as a gunner, and I don't think they have any intention of redshirting him. Which honestly, BJ, now in today's day and age, Coach Patterson has said this before, and I agree. Redshirting is kind of overrated because if he ends up being anything close to what you expect him as a 5-star to turn out to be, he's not going to be here for 5 years anyways. So I'd like to see him being utilized in some way, but they've got so much depth right now at defensive back that it's kind of hard to envision how they get him on the field, unfortunately. Let's get to our caller here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Michigan sucks. Hawkeyes make me so horny.
All right, we got another idiot on the phone, so we'll just keep blocking you, sir, if you want to continue to call in and be dumb. I have no problem at all blocking you. So, you got nothing better to do. You're just being an idiot. So, anyways, if you were trying to call in a second ago, we can continue to try to get you on here, and we'll keep eliminating the idiots. The line is open at this point. Let's go to Scott. Scott, how you doing, sir?
Hello. We finally get to talk.
Hey there. How are you, man?
So, I'm actually kind of glad that Coach Patterson isn't on the line because he was my coach, and he's a terrifying guy to talk to.
So you got to tell me again, Scott. You got to remind me when you played at Iowa.
96 through 98. I was, what do you call it? The guys in the back. Practice squad guy.
Okay.
When you talk to Coach Patterson, just like the kid from Kingfisher, Oklahoma.
Okay, and your name is Scott Ludwig, correct?
Yeah, it was Keller back then. But...
Oh, Scott Keller. That's what your roster name was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, these people call in. I understand the fan perspective of everything. They want to try to understand, okay, Petrus, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't like him. Okay, that's fine. You're a fan. But the thing that people don't understand is the chemistry of players, quarterbacks, O-line. You do that year after year, even from one year to the next. It's a big difference. Like, I don't know, you're staring.
What does that mean, though? What does that mean, Scott?
So for example, was it Erica that called in? She said, well, talking about the D-backs from last year. Well, they should, play the same this year as they did last year. And that's an impossible task to ask for anybody. So just because we were this last year doesn't mean we're going to be this year. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because maybe it's just chemistry between players. I mean, you got 125 kids. They get in fights, they go to the bar, whatever, and that's the reality of the situation.
Okay.
But people want to, they want to get down on Spencer. He's doing the best he can. They want to get down on Coach Ferentz. The entire world of college football agrees that he's probably one of the best coaches in college football.
Right now?
Would you not say?
What does that mean? Like one of the best coaches? Are you talking like right now, currently in 2022?
I'm not saying resume wise, but if you got all the coaches in college football right now together, would they not agree that Kirk Ferentz is one of the best?
One of the best.
Not by body of work, I guess, per se, but
like who would I want coaching my program in 2022?
Yeah, I can't say Urban Meyer or Kirk Ferentz.
When you say one of the best, what does that mean? I mean, maybe I would say he's probably a top 30 coach in 130 FBS teams, but
would you put him that far down? I would put him in top 10. Look
at
his body. Like, I guess what are we talking about here on what makes a good coach?
I don't know. You brought it up.
I did, yeah. So
I'm not saying you're wrong, Scott. I'm just saying top 10. I don't know about that.
So let's what fans want to see from the Iowa program is national titles, or at least a run, or at least, in the playoffs, which I agree. But look at what he's done. Like, we're 12th in putting athletes in the NFL.
Yes, development wise, if you're asking me, who's the best developers, the best the head coaches that develop their players for the next level, the best, he would be at almost at the very top. No, I agree with you on that, but that's a different discussion. If we're talking about encompassing, we're talking about recruiting as a college football head coach. You know this, Scott. We're talking about recruiting. We're talking about development. We're talking about titles.
But where does the basically being the professor of football to get you to the next level and the satisfaction of the fans begins? Where does that start and stop? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think fans would. I mean, I'm not trying to argue against Kirk Ferentz, but since you brought this up, I think a lot of fans would like to see a Big Ten championship.
I would too.
So, I mean, if you're not winning any Big Ten championships,
2004 was our last, Big Ten championship. That shared with Ohio State, and because we didn't play. But this year, But
let's go back. You I don't want to get too far off subject. You brought up Spencer Petras at the beginning, and you talked about
that's what I was getting back to. Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing is, Coach Fry said this to us. Everybody's favorite quarterback is the next guy. And we said it with Stanzi when Vandenberg was the next guy.
I never said that was Stanzi.
Well, I'm not saying you did, but a lot of people did. Yeah.
Sure.
And they did it, and they were right in 2008 with Christensen and Stanzi, but the fans, and I'm not talking shit about the fans, but they really don't know. They really don't know what it's like to be on the other side, being on the team, feeling that pressure, even from fans. And you get out there and you got your arms locked together, and are they booing me or are they cheering me? It's a huge pressure. And imagine, Petras. I can't hate the guy. I didn't hate Rudock. Everybody, all that shit. And he went to Michigan and kicked ass. But basically the point I want to make is people just have to step back. You're a fan. You've never played. You've never been on that side of the situation. And I understand why people, this guy, we should have done this. We should have thrown it to that guy. We should have done this. A caller earlier said, well, why did we check down? Why did we check down? Well, you got to understand the game. The same reason we have, now that we've got our 3 wide receivers back, why are we playing better? Because we have more options, and you understand that. We have more options, and that screws up the defense on the other side.
Sure.
Are we throwing to them? No. We're still going to our tight ends. It's Iowa. People need to understand the game and why. And I can't, explain to them why the game is played the way it's played. You've got 3 wide receivers. Why are we running the ball? It's up to the offensive coordinator or the quarterback, depending if they're RPO.
Sure.
And Coach Patterson, that I learned everything that I know about football from, will say the exact same thing. The game's technically not there for the fans. It's there for the student athletes. They're going to find a way to play the game the best way they know how. And to second guess, back to Coach Ferentz, to second guess one of the best coaches in the nation it's insanity.
Well, Scott, isn't it fair on the part of fans who do pay money or maybe give large sums of money to the program? Isn't it fair for them to at least be able to question,
to be heard? Yeah.
Well, I mean, be heard, but don't they have a right to be upset when you have an offense that's ranked 131 out of 131 teams?
100%. Yes. And I will agree with you. Like, people think, the whole Brian Ferentz thing, he's going to take over. He's not going to take over. I can promise you he's not. Bob Stoops says, if Ferentz is gone in 3 or 4 years, I'm coming to Iowa. He literally said that on national television.
When did he say that on national television?
Yeah, it was.
Bob Stoops said this?
Yeah. College Game Day, Oklahoma. I think it was Bedlam. Look it up.
Okay.
Look it up.
I'll have to look it up.
It was Bob Stoops. He was calling the game. He was wearing a Oklahoma hat, and he was watching the Iowa. It was last year. Anyway.
Okay.
Besides that, if it's not Stoops, it's going to be Parker.
Wouldn't have an issue with that.
Which, I mean, this
the
is
guy's
just
been great.
Being hyperbolic, but
yeah. Well, Scott, I appreciate the call. I got to go to a break here because I'm running up to my. We're an hour and a half in. We're going to be live with Coach Patterson tomorrow. You ought to call in tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll call in tomorrow. What time?
We're live with Coach at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Okay. Well, I'm in Miami, so.
Okay. So 8 p.m. your time. So yeah, feel free to call in tomorrow.
All right.
All right. Thank you, sir. Take care. Appreciate you calling in, man. All right, folks. We are going to be right back in just a moment with more from you, the caller, and we're going to continue to talk about Iowa's 27-10 victory, and we'll begin to look forward a little bit to Michigan, and we'll save some of that for our conversation with Coach Don Patterson. We will be right back here right after a message from our sponsor. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. We are back here from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa football at the Voice of College Football, simulcasting on our 2 channels this evening, and appreciate all the interaction we've had thus far. A reminder, if you're new to the show, we'll be back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time with the one and only Coach Don Patterson, continuing to recap this 27-10 victory for the Hawkeyes over the Scarlet Knights. We do have a caller who's been waiting for almost 15 minutes on hold, so appreciate our caller waiting. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa football at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's Cooper again.
Hey, Cooper.
Hey, I have just two things I want to address real quick.
Sure.
First, one thing I want to address quick is seems to be a juxtaposition between Kirk. Listen, giant Hawkeye fan, Homer maybe, obviously I am, but there seems to be a juxtaposition between nepotism and wanting Brian to take over the program and progress, but then also Kurt keeping players that would progress the offense forward. So I feel like there's people out there that feel like Kirk wants Brian to be the next head coach.
Who wants
in order
that?
to do that,
Who wants that, Cooper?
I'm sorry. Is it? I still got my old headphones. Is it? Am I coming in clear?
Yeah, you're coming in clear. But who did you say? You said that there are people that want Brian to be the next head coach.
No. I'm saying that people are saying that Kirk wants Brian to be the next head coach.
Well, I mean, I think don't you think he does?
Oh yeah, I would want my son to be the next head coach as well. I'm saying with the whole nepotism train, like people thinking that this is the next step forward.
Well, it's not going to be the next step forward when I've said this a million times. When you're 131st out of 131 teams offensively, you that will not fly, regardless of how much power Kirk Ferentz has in that program.
No, I completely agree. Because was it Dan Snyder's son that he tried to get in and they wouldn't allow it at Kansas State, I think?
Well, yeah, Kansas State, Bill Snyder had to come back out of retirement because of that situation. So nepotism, as you know, rarely works, especially in sports with coaching. I mean, if Brian Ferentz wants to be the head coach here someday, he's got to go somewhere else and prove himself. He's in over his head right now. I mean, there's just no question about it. He's in over his head, and it's not me trying to beat up on the guy. But regardless of, they made some strides tonight in certain areas, but I still don't believe there's any reason to think that Brian has a future as the head coach of this program, unless he goes somewhere and proves, learns play calling and learns the quarterback position. Because to just be, as you and I have talked about, Cooper, to just be appointed to this position during the offseason because Ken O'Keefe retires, I mean, we're seeing the results on the field offensively.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think I led into this in the wrong way. My main point kind of was in defense of Kirk, with not necessarily just the quarterback situation, but I think there's people that think that Kirk's stubbornness has. I think there's a group of people that think that Kirk's stubbornness has made him not make changes on the offense, but also wants Brian to be the next head coach, if that makes sense.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry. You kind of cut out on my end.
Yeah, so there's folks out there that think that Kirk is keeping Brian around and keeping this offense and not making changes, but also wants to have Brian as the next head coach. And what my point to that would be if Kirk wants Brian to be the next head coach, he would want this offense to be the best that it could be. So he would not have stubbornness in changing things. I think Kirk genuinely thinks the fullest in his heart that the offense as of now is the best that Iowa can offer. Now there definitely could be disagreements of if that's the truth. But I genuinely think that Kirk thinks that the players that we have in place now are the best offensive players that we can put out there for a system.
That's a problem. If this is the best you got, they rank, again, dead last in all the FCS.
No, and I think it's definitely a problem. I just don't think that it's necessarily Kirk being not necessarily stubborn, but almost. I think there's. I don't think he's trying to slate people, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that if people are calling to have Spencer Petras benched, I don't think that would push Kirk to not bench him. Because if he wanted Brian to do better, he would obviously play the best quarterback.
I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I don't really know what the mindset is at this point.
I think that the biggest criticism would be that I think loyalty may overshadow talent a little bit. I've articulated this horribly throughout this whole call, so I get that.
Good.
And I can't see the comments when I call, so I'm probably getting ripped in the comments. But
well, we all get ripped. Who cares?
Yeah. I just don't think that Kirk really believes that Padilla is better than Petras. I think if he thought that was true, he would play Padilla.
I agree.
Like, I don't think that Kirk is sabotaging this program in any sense. I think that the best argument would be that I don't even want to say time's passed him by, because I just respect Kirk a lot, but I think that the biggest criticism would definitely be talent evaluation over. I don't even know how to articulate, but just I really think that Kirk believes that Spencer is the best option. Like, there's people out there that, and I get that's broad. I don't think it has anything to do with the media coming at him for the offense. Like, I don't think that Kirk would play somebody that he objectively thinks is worse.
I agree.
And go ahead.
I agree with you. I think he honestly believes that Spencer is the best option.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the whole Brian situation. If Kirk wants Brian to be the next head coach, is that if Kirk wants Brian to be the next head coach, he's going to do everything possible to make that offense as good as it can be. Because obviously, like, I don't care how much, as exactly as you said, it doesn't matter how much pull Kirk has. If Brian has 120, let's say we end at 125 offense, he's not the next head coach.
I agree.
So Kirk's definitely trying. I think Kirk's trying as hard as he can to make that offense work. I just don't know if it's the right mind in the system. And I mean, I love Kirk. The very first Iowa, I was born in 2000. Very first Iowa game I went to was the 09 against UNI with the 2 field goal blocks. So, like, I get the system. You know, you win when you take wins, and you take them when you got them. But I just think Kirk's trying his best, I guess, and that may not be good enough. But I don't think that Kirk genuinely thinks that Padilla is better, and he's just playing Petras out of spite. Like, I just don't think that's the case.
Well, I appreciate your take, Cooper, and I do need to let you go because I got a couple people here waiting. But I agree with you on one thing: the quarterback conversation. I have no reason to believe that Kirk Ferentz doesn't believe that. I believe he's playing who he believes to be the best option, and that's his thought. I don't know how you can say that without looking at everybody in a game situation, but based on what he's seeing in practice, he's confident that Spencer's your guy. So he'll keep riding with that, and that's what we've got. We probably won't see a change, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your take, Cooper.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Sorry for the hectic call.
No, you're good. Appreciate the call, sir. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. In response to this comment, no one was never trying to rip Michael Locksley. But Jason says, what was Locksley was head coach where before Maryland? Come on. He's a great offensive coach and a great recruiter. Look, all I said is he has a terrible head coaching record. This is his head coaching record, folks. He's 18-50. And you can say, well, he was at New Mexico. Okay. He was 1-5 at Maryland in 2015. He was 3-9 in 19. He was 2-3 in 2020. He made it to 7-6 last year. That was his first winning season as a head coach. This is his record at New Mexico. 1-11, 1-11, 0-4. And yes, I get it's not an easy place to win. I'm just saying the Big Ten is stacked with, I think, above average coaches, as is the SEC. And where are you gonna, who are you gonna rank below Michael Locksley at this point? Maybe Greg Schiano, maybe what's his face from whose name escapes me at Indiana? Allen? Is it Allen? What's the guy's name? It's already 11:30. I'll blame it on the time. Gonna bother me. Who's the head coach at Tom Allen? Who's Allen? Tom Allen. I mean, maybe you rank those guys below Michael Locksley, but boy, I mean, you're not ranking PJ Fleck below him. You're not ranking Brett Bielema or Kirk Ferentz or Pat Fitzgerald or Mel Tucker. I know Tucker and Michigan State, they're struggling. You're not, Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh. There's a lot of good coaches in this conference. That's my point. And it's good to see Maryland look like they're competitive on both sides of the football because they've been a big play machine, but they've also been a machine that's given up a lot of big plays since he's been there. So that was my only point. I wasn't trying to rip him, Jason. Danimal says, I love the way our RBs, running backs, are getting the ball and go to the best of their ability. And again, that running game gets better. It's going to help every aspect of the offense. And hopefully, knock on wood, you get some receiver health back, specifically Keegan Johnson, because boy, we see it tonight with the lack of targets and the lack of production at that position. Eric says, what's wrong with trying a different QB to see what we have? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you for liking the video as well, Joe Sixpack. Anybody else who has not liked the video, please do that. Little thumbs up button below helps. And if you've not subscribed, please do so as well. As Cooper says, Lucas Van Ness, the like button. Thank you, Cooper. And Vast Outdoor Food. Did Iowa complete a pass to a wide receiver during the second half? I don't believe they did. I don't know when the Arlen Bruce reception occurred, but boy, one reception for the game. That was a depressing stat that Ryan brought to my attention earlier in the day. And Brandon Prisky says, here's a good question. If Iowa beats two top 5 teams in the next 3 weeks, Michigan and at number 4 Michigan and at number 3, I'm assuming we're talking Ohio State. What would Iowa be nationally ranked? Probably, yeah. With the one loss coming to Iowa State in a close game at home, I mean, that would be a weird thing to have a team with the 131st ranked offense ranked, but I guess anything's possible. Let's get to our next caller here who's been patiently waiting. Ben Kearns is on the line. Ben, how you doing, sir?
Hi, Corey. I'm doing well. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I'm a Hawk fan. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've listened to your show for a while, and I love your content. So keep up with your work. Yep.
Thank you.
I just had a couple comments I wanted to, get out there and kind of get your thoughts on them. One, I guess this isn't a defense of anything that's going on with this offense. I think there's no excuses for the lack of production and the nepotism, frankly. But if we are evaluating, I think it's important to use good metrics. And I keep hearing on a lot about total offense and where we're ranking in total offense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily the best metric to use for 3 different reasons. One, we use lots of clock, or at least we try to. Our defense is generally, bend but don't break. So the other side of the ball is taking up clock. Not as much the case this year. We're a little bit above that bend but don't break this year, but I think that's something to consider. And also, more yards is meaning more turnovers when you're pushing the ball downfield. So I think maybe points per game would be a better metric for us to look at. So I kind of had a chance to break that down. I just was curious to see where we stood in the Big Ten for yards per game and points per game. Basically from as far as I could go back, which was 2004 to 2021. And in terms of, and I just did it by conference because I wanted to see, I wanted the strength of schedule to be less of a factor there. And what I found was, we ranked in 32nd percentile in terms of yards per game. And I say percentile just because there's been various, there was 11 teams in the Big Ten, and there's 12 and there's 14. So I figured I better break it down by percentage of where we stood. So basically from 2004 to 2021, yards per game, we're better than 32% of the teams in the conference. But in points per game, we're better than 43% of the teams in conference. If you break that down further under Brian Ferentz' tenure, it goes a little bit down in terms of yards per game. It's 27 percentile. But for points per game, it's actually 55th percentile in his, since he's been offensive coordinator, in terms of points per game. So we're actually, we have above average offense in terms of points per game since he's been the coordinator. So I wanted to get your comments on that. And then the last thing I had was on the quarterback play. So Spencer Petras, just kind of going through each game and, how many errors has he had each game? And I kind of thought of an error as either a missed throw or a poor read. So I had South Dakota State, had 11 errors for him there, 6 Iowa State, Nevada 7, and just 4 tonight against Rutgers. So there's a little bit of optimism, I think, with how he played tonight. The 4 errors I had tonight was, quarter one, it was a slant throw to Laporta. He threw behind the receiver. The false start in quarter one was really on him. He needs to be set for a second and make sure everyone else is. Quarter two, a safety came down pre-snap. It should have easily been picked up. It wasn't recognized by him. He takes a sack. I think that one's on him. And then quarter four, he had a misread on a third down, I think. He took the check down, and really we had a slot receiver wide open on that play. So, but all in all, I think it was a little bit better tonight. I just want to get your thoughts on those two topics. So sorry for rambling.
No, you're good, Ben. And I hope you. So before I respond, I just want you to know, and you know this from my show, that I'm not afraid to voice my opinion on Iowa football. And if I disagree with you, nothing personal. It doesn't mean you're wrong. I'm just voicing my opinion, just like you're voicing yours. I could not disagree with you more on the stance on total offense versus points per game. And I am certainly no authority to ultimately make a call on what's the best way to track total offense, but I know two people who are, and their names are Chuck Long and Don Patterson. And both of those people have said on the record that total offense is the best way to measure an offense. And I understand what you're saying when you're talking about style and certainly I think style and methodology and all these things play into yardage. And there's going to be a degree of skewing taking place because of style of play. I get that. But points per game, to me, is completely flawed. You think about tonight, it's a perfect example. You've got 14 points produced exclusively by the defense. The offense had no role in those 14 points at all.
Correct me. I don't know this for certain, Corey, but this points per game, if the defense scores those points, I don't think it goes into the offensive statistic of points per game. I could be wrong on that.
I think you're wrong on that. I think if you're looking, are you looking at like the NCAA's official stats?
Yeah, it's basically it's just ESPN went back the furthest, so I use ESPN. But yeah, Big Ten stats.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to double check on that. I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any perfect, perfect metric by any means. I guess what I'd like to emphasize is that total offense is not a good offense or not a good metric for this team, in my opinion, based off of the way we play. So, but I hear you. Yeah,
I respect your opinion, but I'm just saying, I'm just telling you what, and I understand. It sounds like you disagree with Chuck Long, but Chuck Long has been asked about this on the record, and you can listen to his response about it, about the offense, and he said specifically, total offense is the true way to measure offensive production. And that was a question that was posed to him specifically about Iowa football. Now, again, I keep bringing him up because you and I can go back and forth about my opinion and your opinion, but I would choose to rely on someone who's a lot smarter than me as it relates to coaching and someone who's played the game.
He's a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, he was. South Dakota, and frankly, he was.
I'm not afraid to disagree with Chuck Long or Don Patterson. By the way, I respect them a whole lot, and I think they're obviously awesome. I could still disagree with them though, potentially. Absolutely. I don't know if I even do, to be honest. I just wanted to bring this up because I kept hearing it's total offense. I'm like, we don't play. We mud it up. We try to win the turnover battle. We don't play a total offense game. That's just not what we do. But
I understand. Like I said, there's going to be some. There's no statistic that's in exclusively a perfect metric. There really isn't, and I think you have to weigh a number of metrics. But when you look, and I give you another example, the South Dakota State game. I believe Iowa's 3 offensive points in that game, if I'm not mistaken, was on a 5-play drive.
That was a defense,
or a 5-yard drive.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not excusing Iowa's offense. This year it's been beyond awful, to be honest. But I think
bringing that up, Ben, was because that's a perfect example of that's reflected. Even if we're not talking about direct points that were scored on defense or special teams. That's an example where I don't even know if it was the defense or if it was the special teams unit that put them in position of field goal range. They did absolutely nothing, and the offense is credited with 3 points.
Yeah, and when they got the ball off the turnover, they did nothing as well.
That's what I'm saying. So you see what I'm saying? Even if we're not giving points, even if that stat is not weighing defensive and special team scores, it is most certainly weighing when the defense puts the offense in the red zone or at least in field goal range, and that happens a number of times. And the whole mudding up a game, yes, I agree with that. That is how they play, but I don't know that that's always intentional. I also think that's because
it's just the way it works out a lot of times, unfortunately. But I'd be curious, to maybe look at how many offensive plays Iowa runs compared to other Big Ten schools even. I don't know the answer to that. I just, maybe if you look at yards per play would be a better way to look at that. But just some thoughts there.
No, I appreciate you. And again, I hope you don't think I'm attacking you on that. I have no issue with your opinion at all.
I don't think you're attacking me. You're good.
But I think it's a better, with all due respect to the question, I think it's a better topic. I'd love to ask Don Pat. In fact, I'll write that down and we'll talk about that tomorrow with Don Patterson, because I'd love to get his take. Him and I have talked privately on that. I mean, we've talked countless hours about offense, but I'd love to ask him about that on the show, because as you know, he is a geek when it comes to weighing stats and analytics. So he understands the importance of weighing statistics. Right. So I think he's the type of guy who'd be able to give at least a good take on what are the primary statistics to weigh when measuring an offense's effectiveness.
Right. And I knew you were going to be on with Don tomorrow, so I almost waited to call in tomorrow, but I thought my wife's out of town. I have nothing to do, so I'll call in tonight. So
I hear you.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And feel free to call in tomorrow. I've got that written down here, so I hope I don't forget. But that would be a great conversation for Don.
Okay. Yeah.
And was there something else you were going to bring up, Ben?
No, I think that was pretty much all I had, Corey. I just wanted to get you to. I guess Petrus play tonight was sort of the second thing I brought up. Just kind of tracking the errors, or what I don't have the all 22 tape. I'm looking at what we see on TV, but I think the errors have gone down really in the last 2 games compared to the first 2. Just want to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I agree. And I haven't tracked it. I'm not looking at true game film, without going back and watching each play on film tonight. I do think there are times, and I don't know how much you're noticing this during the TV film, but there are times where I think Spencer still has issues with his pre-snap routine, and there are times where pressure may come off a certain edge, and I don't know that, again, without being able to say definitively what's going on in the huddle and what he's seeing or registering. It seems that he's missing assignments that he should probably be calling out.
I agree. I think the quarter 2 example was a great example of that, where the safety came down plenty of time for him to be able to see. And I don't know, obviously, how much freedom he has with the offense at this point, but I assume it's enough to at least make a check there, or at least give the offensive line some direction to point out the guy.
Right.
But he just ran free and sacked him. That to me is on him, not the offensive line. So
right.
Yeah, a lot of room for improvement still, no doubt. But
the throw. I think the most egregious mistake tonight from Spencer was probably what I thought was a simple throw on the slant route to Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
On that first drive, and that's just a throw. He cannot miss that throw.
No.
But I give him credit. He hit he made almost all the makeables tonight. And
yeah. And I'm with you on splitting Laporta out wide. I don't know what that really does for us.
I don't think it does anything. All it does is it takes away his strength. It's like moving a guy who's elite at guard, moving him out to. No offense to, I'm not implying they made the wrong move with Connor Colby, but you have a guy who's elite at guard and you move him out to tackle. Because you view tackle as more important. Yeah. You have a bigger need at tackle, but you're taking away the guy's strength at guard.
It's like what does a tight end do? Well, he blocks and he runs and catch passes. Well, if you split him out wide, he's really only good for one of those two things that he can do well. So you might as well just go 22 personnel, and just, if we're going to have tight ends on the field, let's put them in the box where they belong. I don't know.
Yeah. We don't go 22 personnel enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we should. I mean, we should be. I don't. We used
because
to.
Because we're built for it, right? I mean, we recruit fullbacks, and not a lot of schools do that.
Tight ends that people perceive to be great tight ends, and we've heard great. We got a kid from Lafayette who's not even playing. Steven Stylianos hasn't even seen the field right now.
Yeah,
he's a grad transfer. I mean, maybe he's not ready, but boy, I thought we'd have the tight end play to go 2 or 3 tight end sets at times, and we're not.
Yeah,
we're seeing Lachey and Laporta on the field at the same time, but yeah, I don't love the whole Laporta out wide. I did like the go route they threw to Laporta tonight. That was a heck of a route.
Nice. and it was a little bit of a double move too. I've been waiting for us to do that, because especially that Iowa State game, man, they were sitting on everything, trying to jump everything. If we just give them a little double move like Laporta did tonight, that worked out there. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. I didn't expect it from Sam necessarily but boy, he beat the corner, and he's a talented guy. I don't want to see him out of position, and I would just have to think that Brody Brecht's logged a lot of snaps these last 2 weeks. I know that things are coming at him full speed. That's only going to help him moving forward into 2023 and beyond. But assuming he sticks with football. But you just have to wonder, at some point, when do you get Sam back in? You feel comfortable with enough depth outside. I really thought that they'd kind of ditch that once you got Reganey back. But now with Keegan back out, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what his status is moving forward.
With Keegan, I know it's a hamstring, but do you have any other insight on what's going on there?
All I ever hear is rumors of that. Nothing substantial, and I don't repeat any of it because it's just rumors.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's obviously nagging, and it's not. Yes, I had somebody ripped me the other day on YouTube for because I made a comment about how he's been hurt since January. That is a fact. Somebody ripped me. So it's not the same injury. Well, yeah, I never said it was the same injury. He's been dealing with nagging injuries since the bowl game. He was out with an abdominal issue at the Citrus Bowl, and he's hardly played since then. That's a fact. That's part of the reason why I think even when he gets back, there's going to be a occurred.
Okay,
I mean,
so it was abdominal citrus bowl, then hamstring happened sometime in spring ball. Is that
well,
what we're?
you're saying hamstring. I don't know that that's ever been confirmed. Is that
Oh,
been
maybe
confirmed by anybody? I don't think Kirk has ever said.
He's never
hamstring.
said. No. I think I just read that probably through the Twitterverse and assumed it to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
It might be. It might be, but it's something nagging, and all I know is, in hindsight, maybe last week was a bit too soon. But we'll see. I'm sure they'd love to have him back for Michigan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Corey, I'm glad you have media access now. I think, or you've gotten some more media access, and I appreciate the question that you asked Brian Ferentz earlier this year. I thought that was a great question because they need to be asked tough questions. I'm a big fan of Kirk Ferentz, really, but I still think he needs to be asked some of the tough questions, and it's good to see that. I think Lysico had a really good question too the other day.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. You're in the business. I didn't think wasn't trying to grill Brian, but
no,
I do get tired of the softballs. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Then I wish I could be there listen, if I lived in Iowa City, I'd be there every Tuesday. I really would, even though I'm not writing for a print, so to speak. I'd be there every Tuesday, but unfortunately, they have, we're given access to all the assistant coaches not all the assistant coaches, but select assistant coaches every Wednesday morning. And I was able to make the Brian press conference, and I've just not been able with my schedule to make. LeVar Woods met with the media this past week, and I think the week before it was Kelvin Bell. So hopefully we'll be able to be a part of those moving forward, but scheduling's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, it's 1 a.m. here, so I'll let you get back to your show. But I appreciate you taking the call, and hopefully we can get a big win on Saturday here.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the call, and feel free to chime in tomorrow if you can.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great stuff from everybody tonight, folks. We are still going strong with over 250 people on with our two channels. We're broadcasting Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, as well as from the Hawkeye of the Storm. BIB with the super sticker. Appreciate this, BIB. Appreciate your support of the channel. And I want to get to Steve Smith. Thank you for the super chat, Steve. He says, I need a shrink. I find myself rooting against Petrus, so Kirk Ferentz must go with Padilla the rest of the season because Petrus will only hold us back. I want the Hawks to win, but hate myself for secretly rooting for them to lose. Help Dr. Bratta. Well, Steve, I think that first of all, let me just tell you this. This is the best thing a psychologist can say. I'm no psychologist, but you use the word shrink. A sports shrink. I'll be that for a second. Steve, I'm confident in telling you you're not the only fan that feels this struggle. You're not. And that doesn't make you a bad fan because I understand where you're coming from. So don't feel bad, Steve. We understand where you're coming from, the frustrations. Erica, thank you for the super chat, Erica, and your support as always. Sorry to break it to Scott, but we have the right to our opinions, regardless if we play the game or not, even if we are just fans. I don't disagree with that at all, Erica. At all. The welcome, and again, thank you for the super chat, Erica. The welcome project was at the game. Takeaways. Running game much better. Laporta, Iowa's best downfield threat. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's an observation nonetheless. DeJean, a stud and a star. Running back stacked. Iowa fans. Punters. Rutgers fans. Iowa, our Super Bowl. Interesting takeaways from someone who's at the game tonight. So appreciate you and your input. What the heck is wrong with Kirk from Green Home Tony? He could be a top coach if he would just improve his offense and play the next man up when someone has played as poorly as Petrus over the last 10 games or so. Todd, whatever happened to Wetjen or Wheatgen, I believe is how it's pronounced, Caden Wheatgen, the JUCO transfer. Talk early in the season that he was fast and had good hands. And that was the talk early in the season, but boy, I don't even know that he traveled with the team, and I don't think he probably did, frankly. And I've seen, I saw him there at the Nevada game, but I don't know. I don't know what's happened to him. And he was most certainly in my book a candidate. And I know in Iowa's book in the spring, he was absolutely a candidate to return punts because he did it at the JUCO level, and he was getting plenty of reps returning punts early. That's just the ebbs and flows, I guess, of development and battles, and you hope that he can work his way into the mix. And you're looking for the next Charlie Jones. Those are hard to come by. All right. We do have, I believe, Ryan is in our queue here. We'll add Ryan back to the mix. Ryan, you're back.
Hey, Corey. Yeah, well, you just gave me some PTSD by just mentioning Charlie Jones being hard to get.
I apologize.
Yeah, man, that was tough. Hey, my question, excuse me, is about next year. I know you don't play with hypotheticals, but let's play with a hypothetical.
Okay.
So Tristan Wirfs was the only true freshman to start at either of the tackles in the Kirk Ferentz era. Riley Reef started at guard before he moved. Mike Jones comes to mind, Connor Colby last year. My question, though, is Caden Proctor next year. I've seen him rated as high as 6th in the country, regardless of position. Some have him at 15 or so. Do you think Kirk is bold enough to just build around him, even as a true freshman at left tackle? You got Richmond, who would be basically a 3-year starter next year as a junior, because I think he started maybe half his freshman year at left tackle, moving him to the right side where you can then slide Connor back into right guard. Obviously, you're going to still develop Logan Jones, and then with left guard, you can use Bo Stevens and DeJong maybe as a rotation, but mainly as that left tackle anchor. Is Kirk bold enough to take a talent like that and just give him left tackle as a true freshman? Because if he is as good as they say he is, wouldn't he arguably be possibly our best offensive lineman next year?
I've said since the day he committed him before that I think, Ryan, he's going to play right away. I just can't imagine him not. I never said that about Xavier Wampa, just because they're different players, different positions, and they're built differently at their respective positions. The depth issue, I mean, right now Xavier Wampa can't get on the field because they're just incredibly deep on defense. They're not incredibly deep on that offensive line. There's, as you know, needs all the way across that line.
Right.
So I don't know. You bring up an interesting point. Do you want to get Connor Colby back to guard? I don't know. The kid's like 6'5", 305. I mean, it's not like he's a small kid, but is his natural position guard? I think ideally, you'd probably like to have Connor at guard, and then you can, is Richmond your right tackle of the future? I mean, is Trevor Lauk? He's another kid in 2023 that's coming in as a 4-star. That, I mean, heck, if Proctor's ready, maybe Lauk is, all that and more. Who knows? We just don't know. We also don't know what the future of David Davidkov is. Is he done with Iowa football? That's never been clarified. He was a highly touted kid, and he's not with the team right now for whatever reasons. So, and then you can go down the line. Is Justin Britt going to come back? He's another guy who's, been battling injuries and just can't seem to stay healthy. Jennings Dunker is another guy you didn't mention who's in the mix. They've got plenty of competition, and I've touted the personnel there. But yes, I think I know that's kind of a long answer to your question. I think Caden Proctor will play right away. He'll be at one of the two tackle positions. And, after that, I think it's probably just a matter of, can you find somebody that you're comfortable with at the other tackle position? Because to be completely honest, and I haven't studied Mason Richmond enough on tape, I don't know that he's overly secured that spot. I mean, he's been okay, but nobody on that offensive line has jumped off the board, and nobody jumped off the board last year besides the guy in the center. So, to me, it's like I said at quarterback during the offseason, this should be an open competition all the way across. And my big thing is play the guys at their natural positions. And if Connor Colby is a natural guard, then play him at guard. Right. If he's more of a natural tackle, then play him at tackle, and go through those growing pains. But, I also probably shouldn't even be speaking on this, Ryan, because, heck, if Kirk Ferentz knows how to coach any position, it's the offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Heck, I remember him starting James Daniels at right tackle his freshman year, and Daniels just got whooped.
Right.
Then you move him to center, which was his natural position, and he was a second-round draft choice. So,
right.
I don't know. Maybe there is, to your point, too much tinkering going on, and that might be part of our problems. I'm curious why Jack Plum's not playing more at right tackle. Big guy, fifth-year senior. I know he's not phenomenal, but
I don't think he's. Unless he's hurt,
serviceable.
Not aware of an injury, but Ryan, he hasn't been very good.
Yeah,
he was not good last year, as you know. He was not good.
No,
and the thing is he's a senior. It's now or never, and it's unless he's hurt unless he's dealing with an injury that I'm not aware of. He's not been good enough. And you know what? Don Patterson, I know Kirk maybe doesn't agree with this. I'm not trying to speak for Kirk, but just based on his actions, I don't know that he necessarily agrees with this. Don Patterson has talked about, when he was coaching, and when Hayden Fry was coaching, if you had an older guy and a younger guy who were about even, go with the younger guy, because that younger guy has room to grow and potential for that growth. An older guy, you could argue, should be further along. And if he's not, then you go with the youth. So I think at times Kirk has shown he kind of feels the opposite.
I agree.
If there's an even battle, he'd rather default to the older guy that's paid his dues.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily agree with that. But the fact that Jack Plum's not playing much tells me either A, he's dealing with an injury, or B, he is behind those other guys.
Because on paper, Jack Plum notwithstanding, on paper, we look like we could have a pretty talented two deep out there. The kid from Florida, the backup center, Mike
Mislinski.
Yeah. I heard great things about him. Obviously, if Logan beat him out, great. Logan, I really think will probably be pretty good because he's focused on this. He's in his first year. I think he'll develop. We should have a pretty good two deep next year. And, one of the unknowns could be Caden Proctor, just simply for no other reason than his youth, his true freshman status. But, Tristan Wirfs, he had his ups and downs his freshman year, but you could easily see that this guy was going to be special. And boy, was he special. Coming as far as accolades out of high school, Proctor is rated, well, heck, he's the highest rated recruit we've ever had, period.
Yeah.
So, I can't imagine he won't bring a lot of juice to the line next year. And it's so important so that we can, get that passing game and especially that running game going where we're actually a respectable offense where you're not going to load the box and know that you have a statue unmobile quarterback back there and you're going to feast on them. I'm afraid. I hope. I am not rooting for injury for Spencer at all, and I hope he's protected well enough. It'd be great if he could get rid of the ball faster so that he doesn't have to take so many vicious hits. But that Michigan defense is very capable of giving him some vicious hits.
And Ryan, Nathan gives his opinion. He says that Richmond is clearly a left tackle. Proctor will start at right tackle or guard. I just can't imagine him at guard. But
I can't imagine him at guard either.
We'll just see. Like I said, I said it earlier in the show. Ideally, Kirk wants 5 or 6 guys, maybe 7. But, this is not the defensive line. I don't think you want 10, 11, 12 guys that you're rotating in. You want to establish a pecking order, and I don't really think they have that yet.
Right. And we may not until late this year. So,
yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Mr. CEO, are you going to make another Iowa prediction like the Big Ten championship game, or have you learned your lesson? Oh, this week's going to be fun. We'll be live with the Michigan guys over at the Voice of College Football during the week. All right, let's see here. Did not want to skip over comments, but I know I missed some, so I apologize to those that I did not get to. Let's see here. Let's get to Todd. Excuse me, we already got to Todd. Let's get to see Hawkeyes. Has the not targeting wide receivers been addressed yet? It has been addressed, and it's a concern. I mean, Don Patterson's talked about that on numerous occasions. You can't get these wide receivers more involved. Boy, it's going to be hard to win football games in October, November, just given the schedule. You're just going to have to spread it around. I do think it's a concern, and it's been a concern for several years now. We're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break and wrap things up, talk a little bit more about Michigan, and we're going to talk about our show with Don Patterson tomorrow and preview the week ahead here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube. So we'll be right back. We'll take a word from our sponsor, and we'll talk Hawkeye football for the last 10 to 15 minutes. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Arlen Bruce, Riley Moss, and Tavian Banks, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. So appreciate Under the Kitchen and Randy Engel doing great work. And a reminder about both of our sponsors for our show this evening. Under the Kitchen, you can visit them on Facebook. Under the Kitchen on Facebook, inquire about some original Hawkeye prints and use the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your order from Ascent Nutrition. Get yourself a bag of coffee or choose from any of their fantastic products that are bettering your personal health. So again, go ascentnutrition.com, use the code Hawkeyes. Dossie says, I really hope today was a small turnaround for Spencer. Had a good connection with Laporta and played well. Kevin, what do you think of Taylor's punting tonight? I can only get so excited about punting. I actually unfriended a guy on Facebook. I won't even say who it was. I unfollowed a guy on Twitter today who commented something about punting is winning. I can't stand that slogan. I'm sorry. For anybody who loves that, I can't stand hearing that. Punting is winning. Speaking of kicking, Tim Stevens, and he brought up the play of Iowa's kicker tonight, the 51-yarder that would have been good from 60. Good to see Drew fitting right in and having a great 2 games. And boy, I think he's cementing himself as the kicker here at Iowa. And the kid's got a huge, huge leg. Speaking of Twitter, if you have not already done so, you can follow me on Twitter at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. You can also like the page on Facebook, From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. So Iowa, Michigan next week. We'll talk more about it with Coach Don Patterson moving forward. Thank you for this oink oink. Punting is winning. Appreciate the super chat. We'll talk more about it with Coach Patterson, but I watched a good portion of that Maryland game today, mostly just the fourth quarter. And as I said earlier, I saw Maryland actually with their backup quarterback there at the end actually be able to move the ball and take advantage of Michigan through the air, which is not something I expected to see. I do believe Iowa is going to have to be more creative. I've been saying that for a while. Waste downs are a priority. Oink brings up field position. Yeah, that's going to continue to be a priority for Iowa to be effective offensively. They're going to have short fields. You're not going to see a bunch of 80-yard, 70-yard drives. And let's be honest, Torrey Taylor and the special teams unit and this defense, they've given Spencer Peterson, the offense, plenty of opportunities this year as it relates to field position. And unfortunately, many of those opportunities have been squandered. You're going to have to spread the ball out to wide receivers a lot better. The run game was good at times today, but consistency is key. And when you lose 4 to 5 yards on first down, boy, it just kills your series. Now, Iowa did do a nice job escaping some some series where they were actually behind the chains, but you're not going to be able to do that against the likes of Michigan. I still think this is a good Rutgers defense they play today, but you're taking it up a notch tomorrow, or excuse me, next week against Michigan. JD says, I hope that, or no, he says that Kirk 3.0 will come out. We will see some fakes and Harbaugh's dumb-looking face, his mouth wide open and all on the sideline as his playoff hopes crumble. Fan base turns on him. Let's go to Ben, who happens to be a Michigan fan. Great. Boy, it's great.
Boy, good segue into that one, man.
Wasn't it? Beautiful.
I wanted to come, man. I haven't been able to get on StreamYard because it's been giving me issues, and I'm glad I'm able to do that tonight. So, hey, Iowa fans got to be feeling a little bit better. I know it's Rutgers, but Rutgers handled their business so far pretty good this year.
Yeah, they've beaten who they should have beaten.
And hope's not all lost. I mean, man, with that defense, all you got to do is have a little bit offense and a little bit improvement and a little bit improvement every week, and you guys might not be as hopeless as your fan base was thinking earlier. Unfortunately, you do have to play Michigan this next week.
You pretty confident in that game right now, Ben?
I'm pretty confident. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I'll weigh it. I'm
not asking for predictions. Are you confident? I mean, do you have a percentage of win-loss?
I mean, I'm at this point, I'm not real confident. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I just to me, it's again, this offense is going to have to be able to throw the football better, and yeah, they ran the ball better at times today, but when you get to the likes of Michigan, Wisconsin, and even Purdue, loading it up to your two tight ends is not going to get it done. You're going to have to spread the ball around. I've said that a bunch tonight, but I wouldn't say my confidence level is real high at this point, but we'll see. I'm anxious to get Don Patterson's thoughts on the game tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a noon game now. Isn't
Yes,
it? I think yeah. I thought before I was like, for the longest time I was thinking it was going to be a night game for some reason, and then today I remember that today they announced it as a noon game, I believe.
Yeah, with Fox owning rights, that's their marquee game, and you know that because they had the noon game today. Michigan did.
Yeah. When are you doing your pregame for Michigan and Iowa? What day do you do that?
You mean like the pregame, the like the 10-minute preview that I typically release on my channel? Or are you talking about our show with the Michigan guys with the Voice of College Football?
Yeah, show with the Michigan guys, the Voice of College Football.
That would be a better question for Mark. Mark, usually he gets in touch with me early in the week, and I have not heard from him. So it's still Saturday. He's focused on the weekend, so we'll probably find that out here in the next couple of days. I don't even know when their live show is.
Are you doing a live show before the game?
Like the day of the game?
Yeah, or the Friday or whatever before.
I do a live show. I've been doing a live show Wednesday nights. So we'll probably do a live show Wednesday night at likely at 9. I guess that's not official yet. But we've got our show with Don Patterson tomorrow, and then we do an episode of Hawkeye Hangout once a week. So that'll likely be midweek.
Okay, well, I'll actually maybe I'll call in on Wednesday when you're doing the live show, and I'll come from a Michigan fan point of view and approach that
sure.
How I kind of see it.
Absolutely, no, I'd love to have you call in on Wednesday, Ben.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited about the game, and I was a lot more excited. I was a lot more excited about it after I seen the game tonight. We need a good Iowa on our schedule because our schedule is looking pretty bad right now.
Now you're talking about for playoff resume?
Yeah, for play. I mean, if we lose a game, if we lose to Ohio State, I mean, it could just demolish our any chance of being in the playoffs. I don't think we can afford a loss this year. Definitely not with if Michigan State's horrible. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know who to look to other than maybe Penn State and Iowa. I mean, and Ohio State for our resume.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't hurt. I was rooting for Michigan today. I don't hate Michigan.
Yeah,
I was rooting for Michigan because it helps Iowa's strength of schedule and it produces a better game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I was hoping it was going to be under the lights though.
Yeah, I would have liked that as well, but the just how Fox operates now, and they want that 11 a.m. window, and said you get Iowa Rutgers under the lights.
Yeah, that's going to be great. All right, Corey. Well, I was just going to quick shout out anyways, say hi, and I'll try to catch up with you on Wednesday then.
Sounds good, Ben. Appreciate you calling in.
All right, take care, man.
All right, folks. Well, I appreciate everybody being here, and we've still got over 250 people on. It's almost 12:30 at night, 1:30 on the East Coast. I want to remind everybody, Iowa Postgame Part 2 with Coach Don Patterson. He'll be with us live tomorrow. So, well, today now. We're in the early morning hours of Sunday. So, Sunday, today, 7 p.m. Central Time, right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa football at the Voice of College Football. Some of you have donated by Super Chat. Some of you have become a member here this evening. Again, if you're interested in becoming a member to the channel, you'll get additional perks and you'll be supporting this channel. Just another way for you to extend your thanks and your support for the work we're doing here. You can hit the little join button down next to the subscribe button here on YouTube. Hit the join button. You'll see kind of a breakdown of what you'd be getting. But again, it's just another way you can extend your appreciation and your support, which is much appreciated on my end. You also can donate to the channel by using the links in the description below: PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, whatever is convenient for you. Boy, I'm having a hard time. This is when I get to the point where I'm struggling to put together sentences. I know I'm past the point of being tired. But again, those links are in the description below. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of our work here, including the postgame show, From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. Reach out, From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. And of course, throughout the week, we've got Don Patterson coming on the show Sunday at 7. We've got Hawkeye Hangout. We'll be confirming when that will be, but it'll likely be midweek, likely Wednesday evening. Once again, a live call-in show to talk Hawkeye football. And, of course, the game preview. My weekly picks will be released this week as well. And any news and breaking news, recruiting news that comes, I'll be giving some reaction. Kendrick Raphael, the former Iowa 2023 commit, decommitting from Iowa in the last few days, giving some more reaction to that unfortunate news and what it means for Iowa's recruiting class moving forward and their attempt to try to bring in better skill position talent, because boy, they have not recruited very well at wide receiver in these next, really 3 straight so far, 3 straight cycles, 22, 23, and 24. The good news is they've done decent at running back, but the Kendrick Raphael news certainly hurts. All right, folks, we'll be back with you tomorrow, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Please like and subscribe. Please like this video. Thumbs up on this video would help immensely, and we'll talk with you and Coach Don Patterson Sunday at 7 p.m. Have a great night.